Emma Carter stared at the wedding invitation, trembling in her hands. Her sister Olivia was marrying Ryan, the man who'd promised Emma forever before vanishing without explanation. Working double shifts as a nurse's aide just to afford heat in her cramped apartment, Emma had become invisible in her own life. But invisibility was about to shatter. One late-night bus ride would collide her world with Luca Moretti, a man whose power could destroy empires and whose obsession would rewrite her entire existence. This is a story of betrayal, dangerous devotion, and a woman who refused to stay erased. Watch until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Emma Carter stood in the narrow hallway of her fourth-floor walk-up, still wearing her scrubs from the hospital, her fingers numb from the cold that seeped through the building's ancient radiators. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive, the kind of paper that whispered money in a way Emma had forgotten existed. Her name was written in elegant calligraphy across the front, and for one stupid, hopeful moment, she thought maybe someone had remembered her birthday. Then she opened it. Olivia Marie Carter and Ryan Charles Hale request the honor of your presence at their wedding. The words blurred. Emma's breath caught somewhere between her lungs and throat, trapped like everything else in her life lately. She read it again, certain she'd misunderstood, that exhaustion had finally broken something fundamental in her ability to process reality. But no, there it was. Her sister's name. And Ryan's. Ryan, who'd told Emma he loved her 2 years ago in a restaurant she couldn't afford, who'd kissed her like she was the only thing keeping him alive, who'd talked about forever with such conviction that she'd actually believed him. Ryan, who'd stopped returning her calls 3 months later without explanation, who'd blocked her number, who'd made her feel so thoroughly disposable that she'd spent weeks wondering what fundamental flaw in her character had driven him away. And now he was marrying her sister. Emma's knees buckled. She caught herself against the peeling wallpaper, the invitation crumpling in her fist. Somewhere below, Mrs. Rodriguez's television blared a game show through paper-thin walls. Someone was cooking something with garlic. Normal sounds. Normal life continuing around her while her world telescoped down to these 12 words that rewrote her entire history. Her phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Got the invitation. We should talk. Coffee tomorrow? 3 exclamation points. Like this was exciting. Like this wasn't the cruelest thing one sister could do to another. Emma's hands shook as she typed back, "Working double shift. Congratulations." She deleted the last word 3 times before finally sending it, hating herself for the politeness, for the automatic deference that had defined her entire life. Her phone rang immediately. Olivia's photo filled the screen. Beautiful, confident Olivia, with her marketing executive salary and her downtown apartment and her effortless ability to take everything Emma had ever wanted and make it look better on her. Emma declined the call. It rang again. She turned off her phone. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in with their water-stained ceiling and their view of the brick building next door. Emma had lived here for 18 months, ever since she'd dropped out of nursing school when Mom got sick. The plan had been temporary. Take a semester off, work as a nurse's aide to cover bills, go back once things stabilized. But things never stabilized. Mom's cancer treatments had drained their modest savings. Then Mom died anyway, and Emma was left with debt and a job that paid just enough to keep her in this freezing box, while Olivia sent sympathetic texts from her heated high-rise and never once offered to help with the bills. And now this. Emma looked at the invitation again, studying the embossed lettering, the tissue paper insert, the calligraphy that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. The wedding was in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to prepare herself to watch Ryan pledge his life to someone else. 6 weeks to figure out how to smile through it, because that's what you did, wasn't it? You showed up. You were gracious. You proved you were fine, even when you were drowning. Emma changed out of her scrubs, pulling on the threadbare sweater she'd owned since college, and jeans with a frayed hem she kept meaning to fix. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked tired. Dark circles under green eyes, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that needed trimming, skin pale from too many overnight shifts and not enough sunlight. She looked invisible. The thought struck with unexpected force. When was the last time someone had really seen her? Not patients who needed something, not her supervisor barking orders, not Olivia texting superficial check-ins that never required real answers. When had someone last looked at Emma Carter and seen a person who mattered? Ryan had once. Or she'd thought he had. Maybe that had been the cruelest part, the belief that she'd finally been visible to someone, only to discover she'd been just as transparent as always. Her stomach growled, reminding her she'd skipped lunch again. Emma opened the refrigerator to find half a carton of eggs, some wilted spinach, and a jar of pasta sauce nearing its expiration date. She'd meant to shop yesterday, but had fallen asleep the moment she got home, still in her scrubs, too exhausted to care about food. She made scrambled eggs because they were easy, ate them standing at the counter because sitting down felt like too much effort, and tried not to think about the wedding. Tried not to imagine Olivia in some designer dress. Ryan looking at her the way he'd once looked at Emma. Everyone celebrating while Emma stood in whatever corner they'd stuck her in, alone and forgettable. Her phone buzzed again. She'd turned it back on without thinking, muscle memory from years of being on call for everything and everyone. Another text from Olivia. Emma, please. I know this is complicated, but I love him, and I need you to understand. Complicated. As if this were some minor inconvenience, a scheduling conflict, not the systematic erasure of Emma's dignity. She typed back. How long? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. We should really do this in person. How long, Olivia? A pause, then, a year. Emma's eggs churned in her stomach. A year. They'd been together for a year while Olivia had been sending her sisterly texts, while Emma had been mentioning Ryan's name in therapy sessions she could barely afford, while she'd been trying to understand what she'd done wrong. And Olivia had known, had been with him, had probably laughed about it. Don't contact me again, Emma typed. Her finger hovered over the send button. This was it, the moment she could set a boundary, could finally protect herself, could stop being the accommodating little sister who absorbed everyone's cruelty with grace. But she couldn't send it. Some deep, trained part of her whispered that she'd regret it, that she was overreacting, that family was family, and you didn't burn those bridges over a man. Even a man who'd meant everything. Even a sister who'd stolen him. Emma deleted the message and turned off her phone again. She had a shift in 6 hours, overnight at the hospital, 12 hours of checking vitals and changing bedpans and smiling at patients who sometimes remembered her name but usually didn't. She should sleep. She needed sleep the way drowning people needed air. But sleep felt impossible, so she pulled on her coat, the one with the broken zipper she'd been meaning to replace, and walked. The November air bit through her thin layers, but Emma welcomed it. Cold was clarifying. Cold reminded you that you had a body, that you existed in space, that you hadn't completely disappeared yet. She walked without direction through streets that had never quite felt like home. This neighborhood was transitional, people said, a polite way of saying it was too expensive for the poor and too run down for the rich, occupied by people like Emma, who existed in the gap between stability and freefall. Her feet carried her toward the bus stop on 7th Avenue, the one she took to the hospital for night shifts. It was nearly midnight now, and the streets were that particular kind of empty that made cities feel post-apocalyptic. A few scattered souls hurrying between points of light, everyone avoiding eye contact, everyone carrying their own private disasters. Emma sat on the cold bench at the bus stop and watched traffic thin to nothing. A taxi passed. A car with a broken muffler. Silence. She thought about Ryan. Really let herself think about him for the first time in months. They'd met at a hospital fundraiser Emma had been required to attend. She'd been standing by the hors d'oeuvres table in a dress borrowed from Olivia, ironic now, when he'd approached with that easy confidence of men who'd never been told no. He worked in medical equipment sales, he'd said. Found the fundraiser boring. Did she want to escape? She should have said no. Should have recognized the red flag in a man who started their first conversation by suggesting they ditch an event she couldn't afford to leave. But he'd looked at her like she was interesting, like her opinions on hospital administration actually mattered, like she was someone worth knowing. They dated for 4 months. 4 months of dinners she'd let him pay for because her budget couldn't stretch that far. Of weekends in his downtown apartment that made hers look like a storage closet. Of meeting his parents who'd smiled with tight politeness that never reached their eyes when they learned she was taking a break from nursing school. His mother had actually said that, taking a break, with quotation marks audible in her tone, as if Emma's financial reality were a lifestyle choice rather than necessity. Ryan had noticed her discomfort, had pulled her close afterward and whispered that his parents were snobs, that he didn't care about any of that, that he loved her exactly as she was. He'd said he loved her, and then he'd vanished. No fight, no explanation. Just a gradual decrease in return texts, canceled plans, excuses about work until finally, nothing. She'd shown up at his apartment once, desperate and humiliated, only to have the doorman tell her mister. Hale had requested she not be allowed up. Emma had gone home and cried for 3 days, and now he was marrying her sister. The bus arrived with a hydraulic sigh, nearly empty at this hour. Emma climbed aboard out of habit more than destination, scanning her worn transit card and moving toward the back. An elderly man slept against the window. 2 teenagers shared earbuds and whispered. The driver stared ahead with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd seen too much of humanity's late-night desperation. Emma took a seat and pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the city blur past. Buildings gave way to darker streets, closed shops, the industrial areas that most people never saw. She should get off, go home, try to sleep before her shift. But something kept her in that seat, some desire to keep moving, to stay in this liminal space where she didn't have to be Emma Carter with her pathetic studio apartment and her sister's wedding invitation and her complete inability to matter to anyone. The bus made stops. People got on and off. Emma stayed. She almost missed it when things changed. There was shouting first, sudden and sharp from the front of the bus. Emma's head jerked up to see 3 men standing in the stairwell, and even through her exhaustion, her body recognized danger. They wore dark clothing, their faces partially obscured, and one of them held something that caught the fluorescent light in a way that made Emma's breath stop. A gun. "Wallets and phones now!" The voice was young, crackling with adrenaline, or drugs, or both. "Nobody fucking move!" The bus driver's hands went up. The teenagers froze, their music suddenly loud in the terrible silence. The elderly man jerked awake with a confused grunt. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't happening. Things like this didn't happen to her. She was invisible, forgettable, not worth robbing or threatening or even noticing. But the gun was real. The men moved down the aisle, grabbing phones and wallets with efficient brutality. One of them shoved the elderly man hard enough that he cried out, and something in Emma's chest cracked. She'd spent 2 years taking care of people, had held hands of dying patients, had learned to be gentle with the vulnerable. "Leave him alone," she said. The words came out before her brain could stop them, quiet but clear in the terrified silence. All 3 men turned to look at her. The one with the gun smiled, and it was the worst smile Emma had ever seen, empty of everything except the desire to hurt. "What did you say?" Emma's mouth went dry. Every survival instinct screamed at her to take it back, to apologize, to disappear the way she was so good at disappearing. But she looked at the elderly man's frightened face and thought about invisibility, about being erased, about spending her whole life taking up less space so other people could be comfortable. "I said leave him alone." Her voice shook, but it didn't break. "He's confused. He doesn't understand what's happening." The gunman moved toward her, and Emma saw her death in his eyes. This was it. This was how she'd die. Not peacefully in old age, not surrounded by people who loved her, but on a city bus at midnight after the worst day of her life, killed for defending a stranger who probably wouldn't even remember her name. At least she'd been seen. The thought was insane, but it filled her with strange calm as the gunman raised his weapon. At least in her last moment, someone had noticed Emma Carter existed. Then the back emergency door exploded inward. It happened so fast that Emma's brain couldn't process the sequence of events. One moment the gunman was 2 feet away, the next he was on the ground, the gun skittering across the floor. A man had entered through the emergency exit. Tall, dark-haired, moving with liquid precision that spoke of extensive training. He disarmed the second attacker before the others could react. A series of movements too quick to follow. The third man lunged with a knife, and the stranger caught his wrist, twisted, and sent him crashing into the seats with a sickening crunch. The entire fight lasted maybe 15 seconds. Then there was silence except for the groaning of the would-be robbers and the idling bus engine. The stranger straightened, brushing off his expensive-looking coat like he'd merely stepped through an inconvenient puddle rather than through 3 armed men. He was handsome in a way that made Emma's exhausted brain struggle for comparison. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes so dark they looked black in the bus's harsh lighting. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her annual rent, and he was looking directly at her. "Are you hurt?" His voice was accented, Italian, Emma thought, and surprisingly gentle for someone who just incapacitated 3 men with terrifying efficiency. Emma shook her head, not trusting her voice. He moved toward her, stepping over the groaning gunman without a glance. Up close, he was even more striking, beautiful, actually, in a dangerous way that made Emma's tired brain send warning signals she was too shocked to process. "You were very brave," he said, crouching so they were eye level. "Very foolish, but very brave." "They were going to hurt him." Emma's voice came out hoarse. She nodded toward the elderly man who was staring at their rescuer with wide-eyed confusion. Something shifted in the stranger's expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You risked your life for someone you don't know. Wouldn't you?" He smiled then, and it transformed his face from striking to devastating. "No, Emma. Most people wouldn't." Emma's blood went cold. "How do you know my name?" The smile faded. He glanced toward the front of the bus where the driver was frantically calling police. "This isn't the place for that conversation. Come with me." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Emma stood, which put her at a disadvantage since he rose too, and he was easily 6 inches taller. "Who are you? Why do you know my name?" "My name is Luca Moretti." He said it like it should mean something. When Emma's expression didn't change, something like amusement flickered across his features. "And I know your name because I've been watching you, Emma Carter, for 3 weeks now." The bottom dropped out of Emma's stomach. You can't just say that like it's normal. That's stalking. That's necessary," Luca interrupted. "And before you panic, understand that my interest in you was collateral. I've been investigating Ryan Hale's family. You were simply adjacent to my target." Ryan's name in this stranger's mouth made Emma's head spin. "I don't understand." "I know." Luca's expression softened fractionally. "And I know you have no reason to trust me. But the police are coming, and I'd prefer not to be here when they arrive. Come with me. Let me explain. And if you want to leave after, I'll have my driver take you anywhere you want to go." "Your driver?" Emma laughed, but it came out slightly hysterical. "I'm supposed to get in a car with a man who admits to stalking me because he has a driver? You stood up to an armed man for a stranger." Luca's dark eyes held hers. "Clearly you have courage. I'm asking you to trust it one more time." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The elderly man was being helped to the front of the bus by the teenagers. The attackers were still groaning on the floor. And Luca Moretti stood before Emma like a question mark made flesh, dangerous and compelling, and offering answers to questions she didn't even know she had. Emma thought about her apartment, cold and empty, about the wedding invitation on her counter, about Ryan and Olivia and the systematic way her life had become so small she could barely breathe in it, about invisibility. "If I go with you," she heard herself say, "you'll tell me everything? About why you were watching me, about Ryan, all of it?" "Everything," Luca promised. Emma looked at him, really looked. Saw expensive clothes and cultivated danger and something else underneath, something almost like loneliness. She saw a man who'd crashed through a bus door to save strangers, who knew her name for reasons that should terrify her, but somehow didn't. She saw someone who was looking at her like she mattered. "Okay," Emma said, and took his offered hand. His car was parked half a block away, a black Mercedes with tinted windows and a driver who opened the door without comment when Luca approached. Emma hesitated on the sidewalk, this final moment where she could still turn back, still choose safety over whatever madness this was. But safety had given her nothing except loneliness and a sister who'd stolen the only man she'd ever loved. Emma got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive she couldn't name. Luca slid in beside her, and the door closed with the kind of solid click that spoke of craftsmanship Emma had never encountered. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic without asking for directions. "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "My apartment. It's private, and we won't be interrupted." Luca must have seen her expression because he added, "I give you my word you're safe. Whatever else I am, I don't hurt women who've done nothing wrong." "What are you?" The question escaped before Emma could stop it. Luca was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those impossibly dark eyes. "The short answer is that I'm a businessman with interests your government doesn't approve of. The longer answer is complicated and possibly frightening. Which would you prefer?" "The truth. I run an organization that operates outside traditional legal structures." He said it calmly, like he was describing a marketing firm. "Import, export, protection services, information acquisition. My family has been in this business for 4 generations." Emma's tired brain tried to process this. "You're in the Mafia." That's a Hollywood term, but essentially accurate. No shame, no deflection, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement. "Does that change your decision to be here?" "It should." Emma knew it should send her scrambling for the door, screaming for help, anything except sitting calmly in a car with a man who just admitted to being a criminal. But she thought about Ryan's family, his father who ran some kind of medical supply company, who'd looked at Emma like she was dirt on his expensive shoes, who'd made Ryan choose between family approval and a nurse's aide with nothing to offer. What did Ryan's father do? She asked instead of answering. Luca's expression shifted into something harder. Richard Hale runs a medical equipment company that's been defrauding Medicare for years. Overbilling, charging for equipment never delivered, kickbacks to doctors who prescribe their products unnecessarily. He's stolen millions from a system meant to help the vulnerable. Emma felt sick. And Ryan? Complicit. He handles sales, knows exactly what's happening, signs off on fraudulent invoices. Luca's voice was cold now. He's not innocent, Emma. Neither is his family. Why do you care? Emma's voice came out smaller than she intended. Why investigate them at all? Luca was quiet for so long, Emma thought he wouldn't answer. The car glided through empty streets, the city a blur of lights outside tinted windows. My mother died 3 years ago, he finally said. Medicare denied her claim for equipment she desperately needed, claimed it wasn't medically necessary, even though her doctors prescribed it. She suffered for 6 months before the end. He looked at Emma, and she saw carefully controlled rage in his eyes. I later discovered her claim was denied because Hale's company had been overbilling so extensively that the system flagged all similar requests as potentially fraudulent. My mother's legitimate need was lost in the noise of their theft. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. Don't be sorry. Help me destroy them. The words were soft but laced with steel. That's why I've been watching you. Ryan Hale and your sister are getting married in 6 weeks. I had planned to use you as leverage. Get close to you, get information on the family, maybe convince you to help me access Ryan's files. Emma's stomach twisted. So, this whole thing, saving me on the bus, bringing me here, it's all manipulation. It was. Luca turned to face her fully. But that was before. Before what? Before I saw you stand up to an armed man to protect a stranger. Before I watched you choose courage over safety, despite having every reason to make yourself small. His hand moved like he might touch her face, then stopped. Before I realized you're not collateral at all, Emma Carter. You're extraordinary. Emma's breath caught. No one had ever called her extraordinary. Reliable, maybe. Helpful. Forgettable. Never extraordinary. You don't know me, she managed. I know you work 60-hour weeks at a job that pays you half what you're worth. I know you dropped out of nursing school to care for your mother, that you paid for her funeral yourself because your sister claimed she couldn't help financially. I know you've been eating once a day for the past 2 weeks because you're behind on rent. I know Ryan Hale broke your heart, and you still can't understand why. Luca's voice was gentle now. And I know that despite all of it, you chose to defend someone weaker. That tells me everything. Tears burned Emma's eyes. Having her life laid out like that, her failures, her struggles, her invisibility, should have felt violating. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time in years. I hate him, she whispered. Ryan, I hate him so much, and I hate that I still care enough to hurt. Then help me make sure he pays for what he's done. Luca leaned closer. Not for abandoning you. Men are fools, and that's their business. But for the people his family's greed has hurt, for the patients denied care, for my mother and countless others. What would you need from me? Initially, access to the wedding, to Ryan's apartment, anywhere you might find documentation. But now, he paused, now I find I don't want to use you at all. I want to offer you a choice. What choice? Go home, Emma. Forget this night. Forget me. I'll find another way to get what I need, and you can live your quiet life in peace. His eyes held hers. Or stay. Help me bring them down, not because I'm manipulating you, but because you choose to. And in exchange, I'll make sure you never have to worry about rent or food or being invisible ever again. The car pulled to a stop. Emma looked out to see a building that made her apartment complex look like a storage facility, all glass and steel and doormen in uniforms. I need to think, she said. Of course. Luca opened his door. Captain Paz, come upstairs. I'll have my chef make you something to eat. When did you last have a real meal? And you can take all the time you need. Emma should have said no. Should have demanded the driver take her home immediately. Should have run from this beautiful, dangerous man and his impossible offer. But she thought about the wedding invitation, about Olivia's texts, about Ryan's empty promises and years of making herself smaller and smaller until she'd nearly disappeared. She got out of the car. Luca's apartment was on the penthouse floor, and calling it an apartment felt inadequate. It was a space designed for someone who'd never worried about money, never counted pennies for groceries, never worn the same threadbare sweater for 3 years because buying new clothes was a luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Art that looked expensive hung on walls painted in colors Emma couldn't name. Furniture that belonged in magazines. A kitchen larger than her entire studio. "Sit," Luca said, gesturing to a sofa that probably cost more than her car. "Please." Emma sat, feeling grimy in her old jeans and broken zippered coat. She should take the coat off, but that felt too intimate, too much like staying. Luca disappeared into the kitchen and returned minutes later with a plate of pasta that smelled like heaven. "My chef prepared this earlier. It just needs reheating." "You have a chef." Emma stared at the food, her stomach growling traitorously. "I have several staff, yes." He set the plate on the coffee table in front of her with a fork and napkin. "Eat, Emma, please. You're exhausted and running on empty." The pasta was perfect, rich and savory, and exactly what her body needed. Emma tried to eat slowly to maintain some dignity, but hunger won. She finished the entire plate in minutes while Luca watched with something like satisfaction. "Better?" he asked. "Yes, thank you." Emma set down the fork. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why me?" "Even if you needed access to Ryan, there must have been easier ways. Why not approach me months ago? Why wait until now?" Luca was quiet, and Emma sensed she'd asked the right question. "Because approaching you earlier would have required deception, and I try to avoid lying when possible. It's bad for business." He smiled slightly. "But 3 weeks ago, I learned about the wedding, about your sister and Ryan, and I realized you might have your own reasons to want revenge. So you were waiting to see if I'd be angry enough to use." "Yes." No deflection. "Is that unforgivable?" Emma thought about it. About the bus. About Luca crashing through that door, not for her but for whatever justice he was seeking. About how he'd still saved her, still brought her here, still fed her, and offered choice when he could have simply manipulated her into cooperation. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "Ask me again when I decide what I'm going to do." Luca's smile widened. "Fair enough." He stood, moving to a bar cart Emma hadn't noticed. "Would you like a drink? You look like you could use one." "I have to work in 4 hours. Call in sick." "I can't afford—" "Emma." Luca poured something amber into 2 glasses. "If you agree to help me, money will never be a concern for you again. I take care of the people who work with me." "I haven't agreed to anything yet." "No," he acknowledged, returning with the drinks. "But you're still here, which suggests you're considering it." The liquor was smooth and warming, nothing like the cheap wine Emma occasionally bought. She sipped it slowly, feeling the alcohol start to unknot the tension in her shoulders. "Tell me about the wedding," Luca said, settling into the chair across from her. "What did the invitation say?" Emma's jaw tightened. "Just the usual. Date, time, place. Olivia sent a text saying we should talk, that it's complicated, that she loves him." "And how long have they been together?" "A year." She finally admitted it tonight. Luca's expression darkened. "So she was with him while you were still grieving the relationship." "While I was in therapy trying to figure out what I'd done wrong," Emma corrected. "While I was working myself to exhaustion, partly to pay bills and partly to avoid thinking about him. While I was becoming invisible." "You're not invisible, Emma." Luca leaned forward. "You think you are because people have treated you as if you don't matter. But I see you. I saw you the first time I watched you leave your apartment building, exhausted from another shift, stopping to help that homeless woman with her shopping cart. I saw you at the hospital, staying late to talk to a patient who had no family. I saw you, and I promise you're anything but invisible." Tears spilled over before Emma could stop them. She wiped at them angrily, hating the weakness. But they kept coming. Luca moved to sit beside her on the sofa, close but not touching. "It's all right to cry." "It's not all right." Emma's voice broke. "Nothing about this is all right. My sister is marrying my ex-boyfriend. I can barely afford to eat. I'm sitting in a stranger's apartment after nearly getting shot, and said stranger is a criminal who wants to use me for revenge. How is any of this all right?" "It's not," Luca agreed quietly. But sometimes things have to break completely before they can be rebuilt into something better. Emma looked at him through blurry eyes. And what are you rebuilding me into? Nothing. You're not broken, Emma. You've been beaten down by circumstance and cruel people, but you're not broken. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek. I'm offering you a chance to rebuild yourself into whoever you want to be. His touch was gentle, and Emma realized with start that this was the first kind physical contact she'd had in months. No one touched her except by accident, a brush of hands taking change, a patient grabbing for support. Nothing intentional, nothing tender. She should pull away. This man was dangerous, criminal, someone who'd admitted to planning to use her. But his hand was warm and his eyes held something that looked like genuine care, and Emma was so tired of being alone. What happens if I say yes? She asked. Then we become partners. You help me gather evidence against the Hales, anything you can find at the wedding, at Ryan's apartment if you can access it, conversations you overhear. In exchange, I pay off your debts, move you somewhere safe and comfortable, and ensure you're compensated for your help. And if they find out what I'm doing? They won't. I'm very good at what I do, Emma, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent warmth through her chest. I'm not yours, she said, but it came out uncertain. Not yet. Luca's thumb traced her cheekbone. But you could be, if you wanted. I find I'd very much like that. Emma's breath caught. You don't know me. I know enough. The rest I'd like to learn, if you'll let me. This was insane. All of it. She should leave, should run back to her safe, invisible life, and forget this night ever happened. But safe had never protected her. Safe had given her nothing except loneliness and a sister who'd betrayed her, and a future that looked exactly like her present, small, cold, forgotten. Emma thought about the wedding invitation, about walking into that ceremony and watching Ryan pledge forever to someone else, about Olivia's false sympathy and the pitying looks from relatives and the absolute certainty that she would go home alone afterward to her freezing apartment and her invisible life. Or she could choose this. Choose danger and revenge and a man who looked at her like she mattered. Choose to finally matter. Okay, Emma whispered. Luca's eyes blazed. Okay? I'll help you. I'll do whatever you need to destroy them. The words came out stronger now. But I have conditions. Name them. I want to understand everything. No more secrets, no more surprises. If you're putting me at risk, I deserve to know all of it. Agreed. And I won't hurt innocent people. Ryan's mother, his sister, if they're not involved in the fraud, they're off limits. Understood. My quarrel is with Richard and Ryan Hale specifically. And, Emma hesitated, and whatever this is between us, it stays separate from the revenge. I won't be confused about whether you want me or just want to use me. Luca's hand moved to cup her face fully. Emma, I can promise you that what I'm feeling has nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with the remarkable woman sitting in front of me. You're a criminal, she said, but her body was leaning into his touch. Yes. And you were planning to manipulate me. Yes. And this is probably the worst decision I've ever made. Almost certainly, Luca smiled. Are you going to leave? Emma looked at him, really looked. Saw danger and darkness and genuine desire. Saw someone who'd crashed through a bus door to save her, who'd fed her and offered her choice, and looked at her like she was something precious. Saw someone who made her feel visible. No, she said. I'm not leaving. Luca kissed her then, soft and questioning, and Emma made her choice. She kissed him back, pouring years of loneliness and hurt into it, claiming something for herself for the first time in longer than she could remember. When they broke apart, Luca rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight. It's late, you're exhausted, and I have several guest rooms. We can talk more in the morning. Emma should have insisted on going home. But home was cold and empty and full of wedding invitations, while here was warm and safe and held the promise of something more. Okay, she said again, and let Luca lead her to a bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment, with sheets that felt like silk and windows overlooking a city where she was no longer invisible. She fell asleep thinking about revenge and danger, and a man whose darkness promised to match the anger she'd been swallowing for years. She fell asleep, for the first time in months, not feeling alone. And in the morning, Emma Carter would wake up and begin planning the systematic destruction of everyone who'd ever made her small. But tonight, she simply slept and dreamed of being seen. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting sensation of silk sheets against her skin. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The room was too large, too bright, the mattress too comfortable to be her own. Then memory crashed back. The bus, the gun, Luca Moretti and his impossible offer, the revenge she'd agreed to. She sat up slowly, taking in the guest room that was easily 3 times the size of her entire apartment. Minimalist furniture in shades of cream and gray, art on the walls that looked original, a view of the city that made her breath catch. Someone had laid out fresh clothes on the chair by the window, expensive-looking jeans, a cashmere sweater in deep green, undergarments still in their packaging. Emma's stomach twisted. This was real. She'd actually agreed to partner with a criminal to destroy her ex-boyfriend's family, had kissed a man she'd known for less than 3 hours, had fallen asleep in his penthouse like some kind of fairy tale that had taken a very dark turn. Her phone sat on the nightstand, charging. She didn't remember plugging it in. Emma grabbed it, wincing at the time, 9:30 in the morning. She'd missed her shift entirely, had never called in, had probably just lost the only job keeping her from complete financial collapse. 17 missed calls from the hospital. 12 texts from her supervisor, progressing from concerned to angry to threatening. 3 more messages from Olivia that Emma deleted without reading, and 1 new text from an unknown number. "Good morning. There's breakfast in the kitchen when you're ready. Take your time. L." Emma stared at the message, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. She should be terrified, should be running. Instead, she found herself reaching for the clothes Luca had left, stripping off yesterday's wrinkled outfit and pulling on garments that fit perfectly despite him having no way of knowing her size. Except he'd been watching her for 3 weeks. He probably knew everything about her, down to the exact size of jeans she bought from discount stores. The thought should have been creepy. Somehow it just made her feel seen. Emma found the bathroom, marble and chrome, heated floors, a shower with enough jets to qualify as a car wash. She used Luca's soap, his shampoo, emerged feeling more human than she had in months. The mirror showed a woman who looked almost like a stranger, same green eyes and blonde hair, but the dark circles had faded slightly after actual sleep, and the expensive sweater made her look less like someone perpetually drowning and more like someone who might have her life together. A useful illusion. She followed the scent of coffee to a kitchen that belonged in a magazine spread. Luca stood at the stove, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, cooking something that smelled incredible. He looked domestic and dangerous all at once, and Emma's mouth went dry at the sight of him in morning light. He glanced up and smiled, and the warmth in his expression did something to Emma's carefully maintained defenses. "You're awake. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," Emma admitted, hovering in the doorway. "You didn't have to make breakfast." "I wanted to." Luca gestured to the counter where coffee waited in an actual French press next to cream and sugar. "Besides, my chef doesn't arrive until noon on Fridays. If you wanted to eat, it was either me or delivery." Emma poured coffee, adding cream and sugar while trying not to stare at the way Luca moved around the kitchen with easy competence. "I missed my shift," she said. "I should call them. Explain, I had my assistant call this morning. Told them you had a family emergency and needed a few days." Luca plated what looked like a vegetable omelet and brought it to the breakfast bar. "Sit. Eat. We have a lot to discuss." "You can't just—" Emma stopped, realizing the absurdity of the objection. He'd already done it, had taken control of her situation without asking, because that's clearly who he was. Someone who solved problems with money and influence and the absolute certainty that he knew best. She should be angry. Instead, she just felt grateful someone had handled something for her. Emma sat and took a bite of the omelet. It was perfect, of course. Everything in Luca's world seemed to be perfect, from his apartment to his clothes to his ability to make breakfast while looking like he'd stepped out of an Italian fashion magazine. "We need to establish some ground rules," Luca said, taking the seat beside her with his own plate. "If we're going to do this, we need to be smart about it." "Okay." Emma sipped her coffee, which was also perfect. "What kind of rules?" "First, you can't go back to your apartment. Not to live, anyway. We'll arrange to have your things moved, but from now on you stay somewhere I can ensure your safety." Emma's hands tightened on her mug. You want me to move in here? I have a property that would suit you better. A townhouse in Chelsea, fully furnished, security system. You'd have complete privacy, but I'd know you were protected. Luca's tone was reasonable, like he was discussing dinner plans instead of completely upending her life. Alternatively, you could stay here, though I thought you might prefer your own space. I can't afford a townhouse in Chelsea. You're not paying for it, Emma. I am. He set down his fork, turning to face her fully. I meant what I said last night. You help me, I take care of you. That includes housing, food, clothes, whatever you need. Consider it payment for services rendered. Services rendered? Emma laughed, but it sounded brittle. That makes me sound like a prostitute. Luca's expression hardened. Don't. What's between us personally has nothing to do with the business arrangement. You're helping me gather evidence, and I'm compensating you fairly for the risk you're taking. And if I want to keep working at the hospital, then work. I'm not trying to control you, Emma. I'm trying to protect you. He reached out, his hand covering hers on the counter. But understand that once we start this, the Hales will become dangerous if they suspect anything. Ryan's father doesn't get to where he is by being careless or merciful. Emma thought about Richard Hale, his cold eyes at that one dinner she'd attended, the way he'd looked at her like she was something unpleasant he'd found on his shoe. She thought about Medicare fraud and patients denied care and Luca's mother suffering because of their greed. Tell me the plan, she said. All of it. Luca squeezed her hand and released it, pulling out his phone. He swiped through to a folder of documents and photographs. Richard Hale's company, Hale Medical Solutions, has been systematically defrauding Medicare for at least 5 years. They bill for equipment never delivered, inflate prices on basic supplies, pay kickbacks to doctors for unnecessary prescriptions. Conservative estimate puts their theft at over $40 million. Emma felt sick. $40 million? And that's just what we've been able to document. The real number is likely higher. Luca showed her a photograph of Richard Hale at some charity event, smiling for cameras while wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than Emma's annual salary. The fraud works because it's diffuse. Thousands of small billing irregularities across hundreds of Medicare accounts. No single case is large enough to trigger automatic review. But you found it. I have resources most people don't. Luca's smile was sharp. And motivation. Once I knew what killed my mother, I made it my business to understand exactly how they'd gotten away with it. So what do you need from me that you can't get yourself? Luca swiped to another photo, this one of Ryan at his desk, clearly taken through an office window. Internal documents. The company keeps 2 sets of books. One legitimate for external audits, one real that tracks actual billing and payments. Ryan handles sales, which means he has access to both. If we can get those documents, we can prove the fraud definitively. And you think I can get them how? Ryan won't just let me into his office. No, but he might let you into his apartment. Luca's eyes met hers. You're his ex-girlfriend, Emma. If you reached out, said you wanted closure before the wedding, asked to talk privately, he'd think I was pathetic and probably say yes just to feel superior, Emma finished. The thought made her stomach turn, but she couldn't deny the logic. Ryan's ego was enormous enough that he'd probably love the chance to magnanimously forgive her for whatever imagined slight had made him abandon her. Exactly. And Ryan works from home 2 days a week. His home office has a file cabinet we know contains relevant documents. You just need to get photos. We have people who can handle the rest. Emma set down her coffee, her hands trembling slightly. You're asking me to betray him. I'm asking you to help expose a criminal who's stolen millions from vulnerable people. Luca's voice was gentle, but firm. Ryan Hale isn't innocent, Emma. He signs those fraudulent invoices. He takes his cut of the profits. He knows exactly what his father is doing, and he chooses to participate. How do you know? Luca showed her another document, an email chain with Ryan's name clearly visible, discussing billing strategies and doctor payments in language that was barely coded. Emma read it twice, her heart sinking with each word. He really knew, she whispered. All this time he was stealing from sick people. Yes, and now he's marrying your sister in a ceremony that will cost more than most people make in a year, paid for with money stolen from Medicare. Luca put away his phone. I'm not asking you to betray someone innocent, Emma. I'm asking you to help stop someone who's causing real harm. Emma thought about the patients she'd cared for. Elderly men and women struggling with bills, families choosing between medication and groceries, the systematic way healthcare costs destroyed people already at their most vulnerable. Ryan had profited from that suffering, had smiled and kissed her and talked about love while signing documents that denied care to people who needed it. "I'll do it," Emma said. "Whatever you need. I'll get you those documents." Luca's expression softened. "Thank you. But Emma, understand what you're agreeing to. If Ryan or his father discover what you're doing, they won't." She met his eyes, feeling something hard and cold settle in her chest. "I've spent my whole life being invisible. For once, that's going to work in my favor." "You're not invisible to me." Luca reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "And I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If anything feels wrong, if you sense any danger at all, you walk away immediately. No heroics, no trying to salvage the situation. You just leave and call me." His hand cupped her cheek. "The documents aren't worth your safety. Nothing is worth that." Emma's throat tightened. When was the last time someone had prioritized her safety? Had cared whether she was in danger? "I promise," she managed. "Good." Luca stood, clearing their plates with easy domesticity. "Now, practical matters. We need to establish your cover story, why you're suddenly living somewhere new, where your money came from if anyone asks." "What do you suggest?" "A distant relative died and left you a small inheritance, enough to get out of your apartment and take some time off work to process everything. It's vague enough to discourage questions, but believable enough to satisfy casual curiosity." Emma nodded slowly. "And what do I tell Olivia? She's been calling non-stop." "Tell her the truth. That you need space to process the wedding news. That you're not ready to talk yet. Let her think you're hurt and overwhelmed. It'll give you a reason to keep distance while we work." Luca loaded dishes into a dishwasher that probably cost more than Emma's car. "Speaking of which, we should get you a new phone." "Why?" "Because your current one is probably being monitored by your carrier's standard data collection. And while I don't think the Hales are sophisticated enough to have tapped it, I'd rather not take chances." He pulled out his own phone, typing rapidly. "I'll have my tech person set you up with something secure. Encrypted calls, untraceable texts, the works." Emma laughed, slightly hysterical. "This is insane. Yesterday I was a nurse's aide worried about making rent. Today I'm getting burner phones and planning corporate espionage." "Corporate justice," Luca corrected with a slight smile. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "To me, yes." He came back around the counter, standing close enough that Emma had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I'm not doing this for money, Emma. I'm doing it because the system failed my mother and continues to fail countless others while men like Richard Hale get rich off their suffering. Someone has to stop them. And you've appointed yourself that someone. I have the resources and the motivation. Who else would do it?" Luca's hand found her waist, casual and possessive all at once. "Besides, I'm very good at what I do." "Which is?" "Destroying people who deserve it." He said it like he was discussing the weather, but Emma saw the steel beneath the calm exterior. This was a man who'd built an empire outside the law, who'd survived in a world where weakness meant death, who'd crashed through a bus door to save strangers without hesitation. This was a man who could actually do what he promised. "I should be more afraid of you," Emma said. "Why aren't you?" She thought about it, trying to articulate the feeling that had settled in her chest since last night. "Because you've had dozens of opportunities to hurt me and haven't. Because you're angry at the right people for the right reasons. Because when you look at me, I don't feel invisible." Luca's expression shifted into something hungry. "Emma, and because I'm tired of being safe," she continued, the words tumbling out now. "Safe got me nowhere except alone and broke and watching my sister marry the man I loved. Maybe it's time to try dangerous. Dangerous has consequences. So does invisible." Emma stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "I'm already all in, Luca. Whatever happens now, I've made my choice." He kissed her then, hard and claiming, and Emma kissed back with months of pent-up anger and loneliness and the desperate need to matter to someone. His hands tangled in her hair, her fingers gripped his shirt, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to this, to being wanted, to being chosen, to finally feeling something other than numb. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea." "Which part?" "All of it. You working with me wanting you this badly, pretending we can keep business and personal separate. He pulled back slightly, his dark eyes searching her face. But I can't seem to stop myself. Then don't. Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm a grown woman making a choice. Stop trying to protect me from myself. Luca laughed, low and rough. You have no idea what you're asking for. Then show me. For a moment, she thought he might. Thought he might sweep the breakfast dishes aside and show her exactly how dangerous he could be, how thoroughly he could make her forget her safe, invisible life. But instead he stepped back, his control visibly reasserting itself. Not yet. We do this right, Emma. We keep you safe. We get the evidence we need, and then... He stopped, jaw tight. Then we'll see what happens next. Emma wanted to protest, wanted to push, but something in his expression stopped her. This was a man used to control, to calling the shots, to keeping his world ordered and predictable. Letting himself want her was already a crack in that armor. She could wait. Fine, she said. Then let's talk strategy. What's my next move? Luca visibly relaxed, back on familiar ground. The wedding is in 6 weeks. That's our timeline. Everything has to happen before they're legally married, while we still have maximum leverage. He pulled out his phone again, showing her a calendar. This week, you establish your new living situation. Next week, you reach out to Ryan, say you need closure. Week 3, you get into his apartment and photograph the documents. Week 4, we verify what we have and prepare to move. Week 5, we release everything to the FBI and media simultaneously. And week 6? Week 6, you don't go to that wedding. You're nowhere near the Hales when their world collapses. His expression was hard. I won't have you in the blast radius, Emma. She nodded slowly, processing the timeline. 6 weeks to destroy the people who'd hurt her, who'd stolen from vulnerable patients, who'd built their happiness on other people's suffering. 6 weeks to matter. What about Olivia? The question escaped before Emma could stop it. She's not involved in the fraud. She's just marrying into the family. What about her? Luca's tone was neutral, but Emma heard the edge beneath it. She's still my sister. She's marrying a criminal who abandoned you without explanation, Emma. She's known about their relationship for a year while you suffered. She sent you a wedding invitation and asked you to be happy for her. Luca's eyes were cold now. What exactly do you owe her? Nothing, Emma's heart whispered. She owed Olivia nothing except maybe the same indifference Olivia had shown her, but some stupid, stubborn part of her couldn't let go completely. I just don't want her hurt if she's innocent. Then warn her. Tell her what Ryan's family is really like. Give her a chance to walk away. Luca shrugged, but understand that she'll probably choose him anyway. People usually do when forced between love and truth. Emma thought about Olivia's texts, her breezy assumption that Emma would just accept this betrayal, her complete failure to consider how much this hurt. You're probably right, she said quietly. I usually am. Luca checked his watch. My assistant will be here in an hour with your new phone and keys to the townhouse. In the meantime, I need to make some calls. Make yourself at home. There's a library through that door if you want to read, or you can watch television, whatever you prefer. You're leaving me alone in your apartment? Should I not? Luca raised an eyebrow. Do you plan to rob me? I wouldn't know what to take. I don't even know what half this stuff is worth. Then you'd be a terrible thief. He smiled, but it faded quickly. Emma, I trust you. Probably more than I should given we met 12 hours ago, but there it is. You're not a prisoner here. You're a partner. Partner. The words settled warm in Emma's chest. Okay, she said. Go make your calls. I'll just be here. Luca kissed her forehead, gentle and unexpected, then disappeared down a hallway toward what Emma assumed was a home office. She stood alone in the enormous kitchen, surrounded by wealth she couldn't fathom, and tried to process how completely her life had changed in less than 24 hours. Yesterday, she'd been invisible Emma Carter, scraping by and struggling and slowly disappearing. Today, she was someone's partner, someone's priority, someone who mattered enough to protect and trust and kiss like she was precious. Today, she was someone planning revenge. Emma explored the apartment while Luca was occupied, moving through rooms that felt more like museum exhibits than living spaces. Everything was beautiful and expensive and somehow impersonal, like Luca had hired a decorator to create the appearance of a home without actually living in one. The library was the exception. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held what looked like actual read books, cracked spines, dog-eared pages, novels in English and Italian sitting alongside true crime and history. Emma pulled out a worn copy of The Count of Monte Cristo and smiled despite herself. Of course, Luca Moretti would love a revenge story. She was curled in a leather armchair reading when the doorbell rang. Emma froze, unsure whether to answer, but Luca appeared from his office and waved her off. "That's my assistant. Stay. You should meet her." The woman who entered was striking. Late 30s, dark hair in a severe bun, wearing a suit that screamed competence. She carried a leather bag and moved with the efficiency of someone used to solving problems. "Emma, this is Sophia Romano, my assistant and occasional miracle worker." "Sophia? Emma Carter?" Sophia's expression was carefully neutral as she shook Emma's hand. "Miss Carter, it's nice to meet you." "Just Emma, please." She felt absurdly underdressed next to Sophia's polish, despite the expensive sweater Luca had provided. "Sophia knows everything," Luca said, which seemed to carry weight beyond the simple words. "She's been with me for 8 years and has my complete trust." Sophia nodded. "I've prepared what you requested." She pulled items from her bag with practiced ease. A sleek phone, a set of keys, documents in a folder. "The townhouse is ready, fully stocked with basics. The phone is encrypted and registered to a shell company. And these," she handed Emma several credit cards, "are tied to accounts in your name with appropriate balances." Emma stared at the cards. "Appropriate balances?" "Enough that you won't need to worry about expenses, but not so much that it raises red flags," Sophia explained. "We've also established a paper trail showing an inheritance from a distant relative, complete with death certificate and will documentation, in case anyone investigates your sudden change in circumstances." "You people think of everything." "That's literally my job." Sophia's expression softened fractionally. "Mr. Moretti takes care of his people, Emma. You're safe here." The phrasing, "his people," made Emma's stomach flutter. She was one of Luca's people now, under his protection, part of his world. "Thank you," Emma managed. Sophia handed the folder to Luca. "The other matter you requested is still in progress. I should have preliminary results by Monday." "Good. Thank you, Sophia." The assistant left as efficiently as she'd arrived, and Emma was alone with Luca again. He gestured for her to sit, spreading the folder's contents on the coffee table. "Your new identity," he said. "Well, not new exactly, just enhanced. Emma Carter, recent recipient of a modest inheritance from your mother's cousin twice removed. Nothing flashy, but enough to justify a better living situation." Emma studied the documents. Official-looking papers that apparently proved the existence of a relative she'd never heard of. "This is all fake?" "The relative is fake. The money is very real, just coming from my accounts, rather than a dead cousin." Luca sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "As far as anyone official is concerned, you came into approximately $80,000 6 weeks ago. You've used it to pay off debts, secure new housing, and give yourself breathing room to figure out your next steps." $80,000. Emma's voice came out faint. She'd never seen that much money in her life, let alone had access to it. "It's a reasonable amount. Not enough to drastically change your lifestyle, but enough to solve immediate problems. If anyone questions it, you're appropriately grateful, but not overly eager to discuss a dead relative you barely knew." Emma nodded, trying to absorb this new reality where people casually created fake inheritances and handed out credit cards like candy. "The townhouse is yours for as long as you need it," Luca continued. "Fully furnished, all utilities included, security system that reports directly to my people. You'll be safe there." "When do I move in?" "Today, if you want. We can have your things brought over from your apartment this afternoon." He paused. "Or you could stay here, with me." The offer hung in the air between them, weighted with implications Emma wasn't sure she was ready to examine. "The townhouse," she said after a moment. "I think I need my own space to process all of this." If Luca was disappointed, he didn't show it. "Understood. I'll have a car take you over, get you settled. And Emma?" He waited until she met his eyes. "The offer stands. If you change your mind, if you need anything, you call me, day or night." "Okay." They sat in silence for a moment, the morning sun streaming through those enormous windows, and Emma tried to remember who she'd been yesterday. The woman who'd opened a wedding invitation with shaking hands, who'd worked herself to exhaustion for rent she could barely afford, who'd been so thoroughly invisible she'd nearly convinced herself it was normal. That woman felt like a stranger now. "I should go," Emma said, standing before she could talk herself into staying. "Get settled. Start figuring out how to approach Ryan." Luca stood too, pulling her into his arms before she could think to resist. He held her carefully, like she was something fragile, and Emma let herself sink into it for just a moment. Let herself feel safe and wanted and seen. 6 weeks, he murmured against her hair. 6 weeks and this is over. And then what? Then you get to decide who you want to be, Emma Carter. No more Sister Shadow, no more Ryan Hale, no more struggling just to survive. He pulled back to look at her. Then you get to be free. Free. Emma had almost forgotten what that felt like. She kissed him once more, quick and fierce, then grabbed the keys Sophia had left and headed for the door before she could change her mind. The townhouse was in Chelsea, on a tree-lined street that felt like a different city from where Emma had been living. 3 stories of brick and glass, a small front garden, neighbors who probably never worried about heating bills or whether they could afford groceries. Inside was even better, hardwood floors, modern furniture, a kitchen with appliances Emma had only seen in magazines. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small office, and a living room with windows that actually let in light. This was hers, for as long as she needed it. Emma stood in the master bedroom, looking out at the street below, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not quite hope. She wasn't ready for hope yet, but possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, her life could be something other than survival. Her old phone rang. Olivia again. Emma stared at it for a long moment, then made a decision. She answered. "Emma, finally! I've been so worried." "I need space," Emma interrupted, her voice steadier than expected. "From you, from Ryan, from all of this. I got your message about the wedding, and I need time to process it." "Emma, please, if you'd just let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been sleeping with my ex-boyfriend for a year while I was in therapy trying to understand why he left me? That you're marrying him in 6 weeks and expect me to smile through it?" Emma's grip tightened on the phone. "There's nothing to explain, Olivia. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." "Which is what?" "To focus on myself for once. I came into some money, an inheritance from Mom's cousin. I'm using it to get my life together, and that means stepping back from family drama." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "An inheritance? Mom didn't have any cousins." "Second cousin. You never met her. Neither did I, really." The lie came easily, smoothed by Luca's careful preparation. "Look, I'm not trying to punish you. I just need distance right now. Will you at least come to the wedding?" Emma thought about Luca's timeline, about evidence and FBI raids and the systematic destruction of Ryan's entire family. "I don't know yet. Ask me closer to the date." "Emma, I have to go, Olivia. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk." She hung up before her sister could respond, before the guilt could take hold, before she could remember all the years of being the good sister, the accommodating one, the one who made herself small so Olivia could shine. Emma looked around her new townhouse, at the life Luca had bought her with money earned through crime, and thought about morality and justice and whether revenge made her as bad as the people she was planning to destroy. Then she thought about $40 million stolen from Medicare, about Luca's mother denied care, about Ryan's smug face at that last dinner as his father had casually mentioned the parasites who abused the healthcare system. No, she wasn't as bad as them. She was just finally fighting back. Emma spent the rest of the day settling in, arranging for her meager possessions to be moved from the old apartment, setting up the new phone Luca had provided. Sophia had been thorough. The townhouse had everything Emma might need, from food in the refrigerator to toiletries in the bathroom to clothes in her size hanging in the closet. It felt like being taken care of. Emma wasn't sure she'd ever felt that before. Her new phone buzzed with a text from Luca. "Settled in?" "Yes." "This place is incredible." "Thank you. You deserve incredible." "Dinner tonight?" "I'll cook." Emma smiled despite herself. "You don't have to feed me every meal. I want to. Say yes." She should say no. Should establish boundaries. Should remind herself that this was a business arrangement with personal complications, not a relationship. But she was tired of denying herself things, and she wanted to see him. "Yes." "What time?" 7. "I'll send a car." Emma had 4 hours. She spent them unpacking, exploring the neighborhood, trying on the clothes that mysteriously fit perfectly, and wondering what it said about her that she was so willing to accept all of this. But when the car arrived at 7 and took her back to Luca's building, when he opened his door with flour on his hands and that devastating smile, Emma stopped questioning. She was here. She'd made her choice. Now she just had to see it through. The dinners became a ritual over the next 2 weeks. Emma would spend her days settling into the townhouse, researching the Hale family online, building her courage for what came next. Then evening would arrive and Luca's car would pull up outside, and she'd find herself back in his penthouse pretending this was normal, pretending she hadn't completely lost her mind. Tonight he'd made risotto, standing at the stove with that focused intensity he brought to everything, stirring the pot with the same precision he probably applied to dismantling his enemies. Emma watched from the breakfast bar, sipping wine that cost more than her old weekly grocery budget, trying not to think about how domestic this felt, how dangerous that was. "You're thinking too loud," Luca said without turning around. "I can hear it from here." "How do you know I'm thinking at all?" "Because you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're worried about something." He glanced back with a slight smile. It's appeared approximately every 30 seconds for the past 10 minutes. Emma touched her forehead self-consciously. "I'm just trying to figure out how to approach Ryan, what to say that won't make him suspicious." The truth, mostly. Luca plated the risotto with the care of someone who actually enjoyed cooking. "You're hurt. You need closure. You want to understand what happened before you can move forward." Men like Ryan love to believe they're important enough to warrant that kind of attention. "You sound like you know a lot about men like Ryan." "I know a lot about weak men who mistake cruelty for strength." He brought their plates to the small dining table by the windows, the city spreading out below them in a carpet of lights. "Ryan Hale is a coward who does what his father tells him because he's too afraid to forge his own path. He left you because Daddy didn't approve, and he's marrying your sister because she fits the image Richard Hale has for his family." Emma took a bite of risotto to avoid responding. It was perfect, of course, creamy and rich, with just enough bite from the parmesan. Everything Luca touched seemed to turn out perfect, like the universe bent itself to his will. "What if he says no?" she asked. "What if he refuses to see me?" "He won't." Luca's certainty was absolute. His ego won't allow it. You're the woman he discarded, and he'll want to make sure you understand it was your failing, not his. He'll see you, Emma, and when he does, you'll get what we need. "And if I can't? If I freeze up or he suspects something, or then we find another way." Luca reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "Stop catastrophizing. You're stronger than you think." "You don't know that." "I do, actually. I've watched you work double shifts on no sleep, help patients who treat you like furniture, keep yourself together through grief and betrayal that would have broken most people." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You've been surviving impossible circumstances your entire adult life, Emma. This is just another challenge. This is corporate espionage that could get me arrested. Only if we're caught, which we won't be." He said it with such calm assurance that Emma almost believed him. "Besides, technically, you're just taking photographs. It's Ryan and his father who've committed the actual crimes." Emma pulled her hand back, suddenly needing distance. "Do you ever worry about the morality of what you do?" Luca was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Every day." The admission surprised her. "Really?" "I'm not a sociopath, Emma. I know that what I do exists outside the law, that I've hurt people, that my hands aren't clean." He set down his fork, giving her his full attention. "But I also know that the legal system is broken, that it protects men like Richard Hale while punishing the vulnerable, that sometimes justice requires methods the courts won't allow. That's convenient justification. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's the truth." Luca's eyes held hers. "My organization provides protection to people the police ignore. We loan money to immigrants who can't get bank accounts. We solve problems that have no legal solution. Yes, we also profit from things society deems criminal. But we have rules, Emma. We don't hurt innocents. We don't prey on the weak. And we make sure people like the Hales don't get away with destroying lives just because they can afford better lawyers." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her moral high ground. But she thought about the hospital, about patients denied care, about the systematic way the healthcare system ground down anyone who couldn't afford to fight back, about Ryan's family profiting from that suffering while she'd struggled to pay for her mother's funeral. "I'm not sure I'm a good person anymore," she said quietly. Good and bad are luxuries for people who've never had to make impossible choices. Luca stood, moving around the table to crouch beside her chair. You're a person who's been hurt and is choosing to fight back. That doesn't make you bad, Emma. It makes you human. She looked down at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd crashed into her life and offered her everything she'd ever wanted, wrapped in moral complexity she couldn't quite navigate. What happens after? The question escaped before she could stop it. After we destroy the Hales and the FBI arrests them and the media circus ends, what happens to us? Luca's expression softened. What do you want to happen? I don't know. This whole thing feels like borrowed time, like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life. Emma gestured at the penthouse, at the expensive wine and perfect risotto and view that cost millions. None of this is real. It's as real as you want it to be. He stood, pulling her up with him. Emma, I'm not offering you a fairy tale. My life is complicated and often dangerous. But if you want to be part of it after this is over, if you want to see where this goes between us, I'm willing to try. Why? She searched his face. Why me? You could have anyone. Because you stood up to an armed man for a stranger. Because you chose courage over safety, even when you had every reason to hide. Because when I look at you, I see someone who deserves so much more than the world has given her. His hands framed her face. Because you make me want to be better than I am. Emma's breath caught. Luca. He kissed her before she could finish, deep and claiming, and Emma stopped thinking about morality and consequences and borrowed time. She kissed him back with everything she'd been holding in, weeks of tension and desire and the desperate need to feel something other than alone. They made it to his bedroom this time, clothes disappearing between kisses, and Emma discovered that Luca brought the same focused intensity to this that he brought to everything else. He took his time learning her body, finding the places that made her gasp, and when they finally came together, it felt like something breaking open in Emma's chest, like finally being seen completely. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than her old monthly rent, Emma felt the walls she'd built around herself start to crumble. Luca traced patterns on her shoulder, his breathing steady, and she tried to remember why she'd been so determined to keep distance between them. I have to contact Ryan tomorrow, she said into the darkness. We're running out of time. I know. Luca's arm tightened around her. Are you ready? No. But I don't think I'll ever be ready, so I might as well do it anyway. That's my girl. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Remember, you're not doing this alone. I'll have people nearby the entire time you're with him. If anything feels wrong, I leave immediately and call you. I know. Emma turned to face him. I won't take stupid risks, Luca. I promise. Good. Because if anything happened to you, he stopped, jaw tight. Just be careful. Emma fell asleep in his arms, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't dream about being invisible. Morning came too soon. Emma woke to find Luca already up, standing by the window in pajama pants and nothing else, talking quietly on the phone in Italian. She watched him for a moment, admiring the lean strength of his back, the easy authority in his voice, even when she couldn't understand the words. This was who she'd allied herself with, a criminal with enough power to destroy families and enough gentleness to make her breakfast. She should be more conflicted about that. He ended the call and turned, smiling when he saw she was awake. Good morning. Coffee? Please. Emma sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. Everything okay? Just business. Nothing for you to worry about. He disappeared toward the kitchen, returning with 2 mugs of perfectly brewed coffee. So, today's the day? Emma took the mug, kneading the warmth between her hands. I'll text him this afternoon. Say I want to talk before the wedding, that I need closure. The words tasted bitter even as she planned them. And if he agrees to meet? Then I suggest his apartment, somewhere private where we won't be interrupted. She met Luca's eyes. Somewhere I can access his office. He works from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you can arrange to meet him on one of those days, you'll have a better chance of the documents being readily available rather than locked away. Emma nodded, her stomach churning. This feels wrong. Not the revenge part. That feels right. But the manipulation, the lying. He lied to you first, Luca reminded her gently. For months. And he's still lying, still participating in fraud that hurts vulnerable people. You're just using his own tactics against him. Does that make it better? It makes it fair. He sat beside her on the bed, close enough that their shoulders touched. Emma, If you don't want to do this, we'll find another way. I won't force you into something that violates your conscience. She thought about it seriously, trying to imagine backing out now, going back to her old life, or maybe staying in the townhouse and trying to build something new without revenge. But the thought of Ryan and Olivia's wedding, of watching them celebrate while knowing what they'd done, of letting the Hales continue destroying lives unchecked? No. She'd come too far to turn back now. I want to do this, Emma said. I'm just scared. Good. Fear keeps you careful. Luca kissed her shoulder. Just remember, you're not alone in this. Emma spent the rest of the morning at the townhouse, pacing and rehearsing what she'd say to Ryan. The text needed to sound genuine, hurt but not angry, sad but not pathetic. It needed to make him feel powerful and magnanimous while setting up exactly what she needed. Finally, at 2 p.m, she typed out the message. Ryan, I know this is unexpected, but I was hoping we could talk before the wedding. I'm trying to find closure and move forward, but I have questions I need answered. Would you be willing to meet? Just the two of us, somewhere private. I promise, no drama. Her finger hovered over the send button for a full minute before she pressed it. The response came 20 minutes later. Emma, I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Of course we can talk. Come to my place Thursday afternoon? Say 2 p.m.? Olivia has some wedding things, so we'll have privacy. Emma's hands shook as she read it. He'd agreed. Of course he'd agreed. Luca had been right about his ego. Thursday, 2 days away. She texted back. Thursday works. Thank you for this. See you then. And Emma? I'm glad you're ready to move on. You deserve to be happy. The condescension in those words made Emma's blood boil, like he was doing her some kind of favor by allowing her closure from the relationship he'd destroyed. She called Luca immediately. It's done, she said when he answered. Thursday at 2. His apartment. Good. That's perfect. Thursday is one of his work-from-home days. She heard clicking, like he was typing. I'll have a car take you, wait nearby in case you need extraction. Wear something with pockets so you can keep your phone accessible. What if he wants to... Emma stopped, unable to finish the thought. Wants to what? Luca's voice had gone cold. Nothing. Never mind. Emma, if you're worried he'll try something inappropriate, say so. I just mean, what if he tries to hug me or touch me and I freeze up? What if I can't maintain the act? Luca was quiet for a moment. You're stronger than your fear, and if he makes you uncomfortable, you leave. The documents aren't worth your dignity or safety. But the timeline. Fuck the timeline. The vehemence in his voice surprised her. Your well-being matters more than revenge, Emma. Remember that. She clutched the phone tighter. Okay, I'll remember. They talked through the logistics. What she'd wear, what she'd say, how she'd create an opening to access his office. Luca had equipment for her, a phone app that would photograph documents and upload them securely without leaving traces on her device. It was professional and thorough and made Emma feel like a spy in a movie, except the stakes were real and the fear was visceral. Thursday morning arrived with rain, the sky gray and oppressive in a way that matched Emma's mood. She stood in front of her closet, trying to choose clothes that struck the right balance, attractive enough to remind Ryan what he'd given up, modest enough not to send the wrong signals, casual enough to suggest she wasn't trying too hard. Finally, she settled on dark jeans and a simple sweater, minimal makeup, her hair down. She looked like a softer version of herself, someone who'd been hurt but was healing, someone worthy of Ryan's magnanimous attention. She looked like the perfect victim. Luca had offered to come to the townhouse, to be there when she left, but Emma had declined. She needed to do this part alone, needed to prove to herself that she could walk into danger without someone holding her hand. But when his text came at noon, "You can do this. I believe in you." Emma felt the knot in her chest loosen slightly. The car arrived at 1:30. Emma climbed in, her new phone heavy in her pocket with its special app loaded and ready. The driver was one of Luca's people, a quiet man who'd introduced himself as Marco and promised he'd be parked within shouting distance the entire time. Ryan's building was in the financial district, all glass and steel and doormen who looked at Emma like they were calculating her net worth. She gave Ryan's name and apartment number, and the doorman's expression shifted to something that might have been pity. Clearly, she wasn't the first ex-girlfriend to make this particular walk of shame. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt eternal. Emma checked her reflection in the mirrored walls, making sure she looked appropriately vulnerable, appropriately harmless. The doors opened and there was Ryan's apartment, 23C, the same door she'd knocked on months ago, only to be turned away by the doorman. Her hand trembled as she rang the bell. Ryan answered almost immediately, and Emma's traitorous heart did a stupid little flip at the sight of him. He looked good. He always looked good, with his perfectly styled hair and expensive casual clothes, and that smile that had once made her feel like the only woman in the world. "Emma, come in." He stepped back, gesturing her inside with the easy confidence of someone in his own territory. "You look well." "Thank you. So do you." The words came automatically, trained politeness overriding the anger that wanted to pour out. His apartment was exactly as she remembered. Sleek furniture, minimal decoration, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a magazine rather than to an actual human being. Through the windows, the city sprawled gray and rainy. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be great, thanks." Ryan moved to the kitchen while Emma stood awkwardly in the living room, cataloging details. His office was visible through a partially open door to the left. She could see the edge of a desk, filing cabinets against the wall. That was her target. "Here." Ryan handed her a glass of water, gesturing to the sofa. "Sit, please." Emma sat, and Ryan took the chair across from her, maintaining careful distance, playing the gentleman. "So," he said, "you wanted to talk." Emma took a sip of water, buying time. "I know this is awkward, and I'm sure Olivia wouldn't be thrilled about us meeting alone. But I need to understand what happened between us, Ryan. I need closure before I can move forward." "I understand, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry things ended the way they did." He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "It wasn't fair to you, disappearing like that." "No, it wasn't." Emma let hurt bleed into her voice. "One day we were talking about the future, and the next you were just gone. I spent months wondering what I'd done wrong." Ryan shifted in his chair. "You didn't do anything wrong, Emma. You are a good person. It just wasn't the right fit. Because of your family." She said it gently, like it was a realization rather than something she'd known all along. "Your father didn't approve of me." Ryan's expression tightened fractionally. "My father has strong opinions about a lot of things, but the decision was mine." "Was it?" Emma leaned forward slightly. "Well, because it felt like one day your parents met me and the next day you were making excuses. And now you're with Olivia, who has the marketing job and the downtown apartment and the background your father approves of. That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Emma's voice cracked slightly, genuine emotion breaking through the performance. "I loved you, Ryan. I would have done anything for you. But I was never going to be enough, was I? Not with the wrong job, the wrong education, the wrong family. Emma, and now you're marrying my sister, and I just need to know if you ever actually cared about me or if I was just convenient until something better came along." The words hung in the air between them. Ryan's jaw worked, and Emma saw genuine discomfort cross his features. Good. She wanted him uncomfortable, wanted him to feel even a fraction of what she'd felt. "I did care about you," he said finally. "I still do. You deserved better than how I ended things." "Then why?" Emma let tears pool in her eyes. Not hard, given the genuine hurt beneath the manipulation. "Why did you just throw me away?" Ryan stood abruptly, moving to the windows. "Because I'm a coward, okay? Because my father made it clear you weren't suitable, and I didn't have the spine to stand up to him. Because it was easier to ghost you than to have the conversation where I chose his approval over your happiness." The admission should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt sad. "And Olivia?" Emma asked. "Olivia is—" He stopped, choosing words carefully. "She fits the life my family expects. But Emma, if I'm being honest, what I had with you was more real than anything I've felt since." The irony of that confession, coming from the man whose criminal family she was planning to destroy, wasn't lost on Emma. "Can I use your bathroom?" she asked abruptly. Ryan blinked at the subject change. "What? Oh yeah, of course. You remember where it is?" "I think so." Emma stood, moving toward the hallway. "I'll just be a minute." She walked past the bathroom, her heart hammering, and slipped into Ryan's office instead. The room was exactly as Luca had described. Desk with a computer, filing cabinets along one wall, papers scattered across the surface in the organized chaos of someone who worked from home. Emma pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and opened the camera app Luca's tech person had installed. The filing cabinets were labeled. Emma moved to the one marked HMS Client Files and pulled it open as quietly as possible. Inside were folders organized by date, each stuffed with what looked like invoices and contracts. She started photographing, the app capturing each page silently and uploading immediately to Luca's secure server. Her hands trembled so badly she had to brace against the cabinet to keep the images clear. 5 folders. 10. 15. Each one documenting Medicare billing, doctor payments, equipment sales that probably didn't exist. Emma, you okay? Ryan's voice from the hallway made Emma's heart stop. She shoved the drawer closed as quietly as possible and called back, "Yeah, sorry, just felt dizzy for a second. Be right out." She exited the office and ducked into the bathroom, running water and splashing her face to explain the delay. Her reflection looked pale, terrified, nothing like the composed mask she'd been wearing. "Get it together," she told herself. "You're almost done." Emma returned to the living room where Ryan waited with visible concern. "You sure you're okay? You look pale." "Just a headache. I think the emotional intensity is catching up with me." She managed a weak smile. "I should probably go, but thank you for this, Ryan, for being honest. It helps. I'm glad." He moved closer, and Emma forced herself not to flinch. "And Emma, I really do hope you find happiness. You deserve it." "So do you," she lied. Ryan hugged her at the door, and Emma endured it, counting seconds until she could pull away. His cologne was the same as she remembered, and for one horrible moment she was transported back to when that scent had meant safety and love and a future that had never been real. Then she was in the elevator, then the lobby, then outside where Marco waited with the car door already open. Emma climbed in and only then let herself shake. "You okay, miss?" Marco asked, pulling into traffic. "Yeah, I just need to get home." Her phone buzzed with a text from Luca. "How did it go?" Emma's fingers trembled as she typed. "Got the photos. I need to see you. Come to my place. I'm already here." The drive to Luca's building passed in a blur. Emma barely remembered the elevator ride up, the door opening, Luca pulling her inside and into his arms before she could say a word. "You're shaking," he murmured against her hair. "I'm fine. I got what we needed." Emma pulled back enough to look at him. The filing cabinet was full of documents. I photographed everything I could in the time I had. "You did perfectly." Luca cupped her face. "Emma, you were incredible. I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's the adrenaline. Come here." He led her to the sofa, pulling her down beside him. "Tell me what happened." Emma recounted the visit. Ryan's admission about his father, the access to his office, the near miss when he'd called out. Luca listened intently, his expression growing darker as she described Ryan's confession. "He actually said you weren't suitable," Luca said, voice tight with controlled anger. "It doesn't matter. We got what we needed." "It matters." His hand found hers. "Emma, you're worth 10 of him, more. And the fact that he couldn't see that—" "Luca." Emma squeezed his hand. "I know, and honestly, after being with you, I don't know what I ever saw in Ryan. He's so small, weak, like you said. I just wanted someone to love me, and I confused his attention for actual caring." "You deserved actual caring." Luca pulled her closer. "And for the record, you have it now. From me." Emma's throat tightened. "We barely know each other." "I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and stronger than you believe. I know you make me want to be better than I am. I know that when I think about the future, I want you in it." He tilted her face up to his. "Is that enough?" "It's terrifying," Emma whispered. "Love usually is." Love. The word hung between them, too big and too soon and absolutely true despite all logic. "I think I'm falling for you," Emma admitted, which is insane given the circumstances, but there it is. Luca's smile was devastating. "Good, because I'm already gone for you, Emma Carter. Have been since I watched you stand up to that gunman." He kissed her then, soft and reverent, and Emma let herself fall into it. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this darkness. They spent the evening going through the photographs Emma had taken. Luca's tech person had already begun analyzing them, confirming that they showed exactly what they'd hoped: systematic fraud, falsified billing, kickback payments to doctors. "This is enough," Luca said. satisfaction clear in his voice. Between these documents and what we already had, we can prove the entire scheme. Richard Hale is finished. And Ryan? Also finished. He's listed on half these invoices, Emma. He knew exactly what was happening. Emma should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. When do we move? 2 weeks. We need time to verify everything, prepare the evidence package for the FBI, coordinate with media contacts to ensure maximum coverage. Luca pulled her against his side. Then we burn their world down. And Olivia? What about her? She's going to be devastated. Her fiancé arrested, her future destroyed. Emma picked at the hem of her sweater. I know she hurt me, but she's still my sister. Luca was quiet for a moment. Do you want to warn her? I don't know. Maybe? Emma looked up at him. Would that compromise everything? Potentially. If she tells Ryan, if they try to destroy evidence or flee, he stopped. But I also understand the impulse. She's family, even if she's been a terrible sister. Emma thought about Olivia, about their childhood before competition and resentment had poisoned everything. About the sister who'd braided her hair and shared secrets and promised to always have her back, before life had taught them to fight over scraps instead of building something together. I'll think about it, Emma said. I have 2 weeks to decide. Whatever you choose, I'll support it. Luca kissed her temple. This is your revenge, Emma. You call the shots. My revenge, Emma thought. When had she become someone who planned revenge? When had she stopped being the woman who made herself small and started being someone who fought back? Somewhere between the bus and the bedroom, between invisibility and being seen, she'd transformed into someone she barely recognized. She just hoped she'd still recognize herself when this was all over. The decision about Olivia haunted Emma through the following week. She'd wake in Luca's bed, she'd stopped pretending she needed the townhouse for anything except storage, and the question would be waiting for her like an unwelcome house guest. Warn her sister or let her fall with Ryan and his family? Choose blood or choose justice? On Tuesday morning, 8 days before Luca planned to release everything to the FBI, Emma finally made up her mind. I need to talk to Olivia, she said over breakfast. Luca had made omelets again, and they sat at his dining table watching the city wake up below them. Face to face, before everything happens. Luca's fork paused halfway to his mouth. You're sure? No, but I'll regret it if I don't at least try. Emma pushed eggs around her plate without eating. She deserves to know what she's walking into. What happens after that is her choice. It's a risk. If she warns Ryan, I'll make sure she understands that warning him would destroy any chance of her walking away clean. Emma met his eyes. I'm not asking permission, Luca. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. His expression shifted into something that might have been pride. When? Today. I'll text her, ask to meet for coffee, somewhere public where she can't make a scene. Emma finally took a bite of omelet, her stomach churning too much to appreciate it. I just need to figure out what to say. The truth, mostly. Luca reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Tell her Ryan's family is under investigation, that she needs to distance herself before she gets caught in the fallout. You don't have to tell her about your involvement. You mean lie to her? I mean protect yourself while still giving her a chance. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Emma, Olivia chose Ryan over you. She's been lying to you for a year. You don't owe her complete honesty. He was right, Emma knew, but the prospect of looking her sister in the eye and lying still made her feel sick. She texted Olivia after breakfast. Can we meet for coffee today? I think we need to talk. The response came within minutes. Yes, I've been hoping you'd reach out. The cafe on Bleecker at 2? See you then. Emma spent the hours before the meeting rehearsing what she'd say, trying to find words that would convey urgency without revealing too much. Luca had meetings all afternoon, something about a shipment that required his attention, details he didn't share and Emma didn't ask about. So she prepared alone in the townhouse, changing outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a sweater that looked casual but put together. She needed to look like someone whose life had improved, someone Olivia might actually take seriously. Marco drove her to the cafe, parking where he could watch the entrance. Emma appreciated the protection, even as it reminded her how deep into Luca's world she'd fallen. She had bodyguards now, security details. Her life had become something from a movie, except the danger was real. and the consequences permanent. Olivia was already there when Emma arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 lattes waiting. She looked good. She always looked good, with her perfectly styled hair and designer clothes and the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. When she saw Emma, her face lit up with genuine happiness. "Emma, you look amazing. Is that a new sweater?" "Yeah, recent purchase." Emma slid into the seat across from her, accepting the latte with a murmured thanks. "How are you?" "Stressed? Wedding planning is intense." Olivia laughed, but it sounded strained. "But I'm so glad you wanted to meet. I've missed you." The words should have warmed Emma. Instead, they just felt hollow. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Emma began carefully. "About you and Ryan. About how complicated everything is." "And?" Olivia leaned forward hopefully. "Are you okay with it? With us?" Emma took a sip of her latte to buy time. "I'm working on it. But Olivia, I asked you here because I need to tell you something important about Ryan's family." Olivia's expression shifted, wariness creeping in. "What about them?" "They're under investigation. The FBI is looking into Richard Hale's company for Medicare fraud." Emma kept her voice low, conscious of other cafe patrons. "It's serious, Liv. If you marry into that family, you could get caught up in the legal fallout." The color drained from Olivia's face. "What are you talking about? Ryan's father runs a legitimate medical supply company." "No, he doesn't. He's been defrauding Medicare for years. Overbilling, fake invoices, kickbacks to doctors. And Ryan's involved. He signs off on the fraudulent billing." Emma pulled out her phone, showing Olivia one of the less incriminating documents she'd photographed. "I'm telling you this because you're my sister and I don't want to see you destroyed by association." Olivia stared at the document, her hand trembling as she held Emma's phone. "Where did you get this?" "That's not important. What matters is that it's real. And there's a lot more where that came from. The FBI is building a case, Olivia. When they move, everyone connected to Hale Medical Solutions is going to fall." "Ryan wouldn't—" Olivia stopped, swallowing hard. "He works in sales. He's not involved in billing or—" "His name is on the invoices. He's absolutely involved." Emma gentled her voice. "Liv, I know you love him, but you need to protect yourself. Call off the wedding, distance yourself from the family, cooperate with investigators if they contact you. Don't go down with his ship." Olivia set the phone down like it burned. "When is this happening? The FBI investigation?" "Soon. I don't know exactly when, but soon enough that you need to act now. And you just happen to get your hands on internal company documents." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "How, Emma? How do you know all this?" Emma had prepared for this question, had rehearsed her answer. "I have a friend who works in healthcare fraud investigation. When I mentioned Ryan's company, they looked into it and found irregularities. They gave me enough to warn you, but they can't stop what's coming." It was a reasonable lie, close enough to truth to be believable. But Olivia was staring at her with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. "A friend," Olivia repeated slowly. "In the 3 weeks since you got your mysterious inheritance and moved to a townhouse in Chelsea and stopped working at the hospital, you've made friends with fraud investigators." Emma's stomach dropped. "I'm trying to help you." "Or you're trying to sabotage my wedding." Olivia's voice rose slightly. "You've always been jealous, Emma. Always resented that things came easier to me. And now that I'm finally happy, you show up with some conspiracy theory about Ryan's family being criminals?" "It's not a conspiracy theory. It's documented fraud, Olivia. I'm showing you evidence. Evidence you obtained illegally, apparently. Evidence from this convenient friend who just happens to have access to confidential FBI information." Olivia stood abruptly. "I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not falling for it. Ryan loves me. His family has been nothing but welcoming. And I'm not going to blow up my future because my bitter little sister can't stand to see me happy." The words hit like a physical blow. Emma stood too, keeping her voice low with effort. "I'm not bitter. I'm trying to save you from making a massive mistake. The only mistake I made was feeling guilty about Ryan." Olivia grabbed her purse. "You know what? He was right to leave you. You're exhausting, Emma. Always the victim. Always expecting everyone to feel sorry for you because your life is hard. Well, some of us work for what we have instead of waiting for handouts." "Handouts?" Emma's voice came out sharper than intended. "I worked 60-hour weeks while you were building your career. I paid for Mom's funeral alone because you claimed you couldn't afford to help." I've never asked you for anything except basic human decency. And I'm giving it to you by inviting you to my wedding despite you dating my fiancé first. That's pretty decent, Emma. Olivia's eyes were cold now, any sisterly warmth completely gone. But if you keep spreading lies about Ryan's family, you're not welcome. In fact, consider yourself uninvited. I don't need your toxic energy at my celebration. She turned and walked out, leaving Emma standing alone beside the table with 2 half-finished lattes and the wreckage of any remaining relationship they'd had. Emma sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. She'd known Olivia might not believe her, but she hadn't anticipated the venom. The casual cruelty of someone who'd convinced herself that Emma was the problem, that warning her was manipulation rather than mercy. Her phone buzzed with the text from Marco. "Everything okay? Want me to come in?" Emma texted back, "I'm fine, give me 5 minutes." But she wasn't fine. She'd just lost her sister, really, truly lost her in a way that felt permanent. And worse, she'd tipped her hand. If Olivia told Ryan about the investigation, if they started destroying evidence or preparing defenses. Emma's phone rang. "Luca." "How did it go?" he asked without preamble. "Terribly. She didn't believe me, accused me of being jealous and trying to sabotage the wedding. Then she uninvited me and walked out." Emma's voice cracked. "And Luca, she might tell Ryan. I didn't think she would, but after that reaction..." "Breathe, Emma. It's okay." "It's not okay. I might have just compromised everything." "You didn't. We have backup plans, remember?" His voice was steady, grounding. "And honestly, if Olivia warns Ryan, it might work in our favor. Guilty people do stupid things when they panic. He might try to destroy evidence, which is a separate crime. Or he might try to run, which makes him look even worse." Emma took a shaky breath. "You're not angry?" "At you, never. You tried to save your sister despite her not deserving it. That's who you are, Emma. It's one of the things I..." He stopped. "Just come home, okay? Let Marco bring you here. We'll figure out next steps together." Home. He'd called his penthouse home like it was her space too now. "Okay," Emma whispered. "I'm coming." The ride back felt longer than it was. Emma replayed the conversation with Olivia, wondering if she could have handled it differently, said something that would have broken through her sister's defensive anger. But she kept coming back to the same conclusion. Olivia had chosen Ryan over family long ago. Today had just made it official. Luca was waiting when she arrived, pulling her into his arms the moment she walked through the door. Emma let herself sink into his strength, breathing in his scent, expensive cologne and coffee, and something uniquely him that made her feel safe. "I lost her," Emma said against his chest. "My sister. She's really gone." "I know. I'm sorry." His hand stroked her hair gently. "But Emma, you gave her a choice. What she does with it is on her, not you." She called me exhausting. Said Ryan was right to leave me because I'm always playing the victim. Luca's arms tightened. "She said that?" "Among other things. Apparently I'm jealous and bitter and expecting handouts." Emma pulled back enough to look at him. "Is she right? Am I just a bitter ex-girlfriend who can't stand to see other people happy?" "No. You're someone who's been hurt and is fighting back. And the people who hurt you are trying to reframe that as a character flaw." Luca cupped her face. "Don't let them rewrite the narrative, Emma. You know the truth. The truth is that I'm helping destroy my sister's fiancé and his family. The truth is that you're helping stop criminals who've stolen millions from vulnerable people. Your sister's fiancé being one of those criminals is unfortunate, but it doesn't change what's right." Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to the moral clarity that had driven her into this alliance in the first place. But Olivia's words had burrowed under her skin, making her question everything. "What if I'm doing this for the wrong reasons?" she asked quietly. "What if it's not really about justice, but about punishing Ryan for hurting me?" Luca was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. Would that make the evidence less real? Would it make Richard Hale's fraud victims less harmed? Would it change the fact that the legal system has failed to stop them? No, but then your motivations are irrelevant. Good outcomes don't require pure intentions, Emma. They just require action. He kissed her forehead. "But for what it's worth, I think you're doing this for the right reasons. You've never once asked me to make Ryan suffer personally. You've only asked to expose the truth and protect future victims. That's justice, not revenge. It feels like both sometimes. Maybe it is. Maybe justice and revenge aren't as different as we pretend. Luca led her to the sofa, pulling her down beside him. The people writing the rules are usually the ones benefiting from them. They want us to believe that working within broken systems is virtuous and taking direct action is wrong. But when the system protects predators, sometimes breaking it is the moral choice. Emma leaned against him, exhausted by emotion and moral complexity and the weight of decisions she'd never imagined having to make. When does this get easier? It doesn't. You just get stronger. They sat in silence for a while, watching afternoon fade into evening through the massive windows. Emma thought about Olivia's anger, about the sister she'd lost years ago to competition, and resentment finally, officially becoming a stranger. It hurt, but underneath the pain was something else. Relief. She didn't have to pretend anymore, didn't have to maintain a relationship that had been one-sided for years, didn't have to smile through hurt and betrayal, didn't have to make herself small so Olivia could shine brighter. She was free of it, free of her. "I'm okay," Emma said suddenly, surprising herself. "I mean, I'm sad, but I'm also okay. Is that terrible?" "It's honest." Luca's arm around her shoulders tightened slightly. "And no, it's not terrible. Sometimes the end of something painful feels like relief, even when we loved what it used to be." "Did you ever lose someone like that? Someone who mattered?" Luca was quiet long enough that Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My brother. We were close as kids, but when I took over the family business, he wanted no part of it. Said I was choosing crime over family, that I'd become everything our mother wouldn't have wanted. Where is he now? Chicago, married, 2 kids, completely legitimate life. We haven't spoken in 5 years." The pain in his voice was carefully controlled but unmistakable. "He sends a Christmas card every year with a photo of his family. Never includes a return address." Emma turned to look at him. "I'm sorry. So am I. But he made his choice, and I made mine. We want different things from life." Luca's expression was distant. Sometimes love isn't enough to bridge that gap. "Do you regret it? Your choice?" "Every day? And never." He focused on her again. "I regret that it cost me my brother, but I don't regret building something that protects people the system ignores, that provides for families who can't access traditional routes, that holds predators accountable when courts won't. The work matters, even when the cost is high." Emma understood that in her bones. The work mattered. Exposing the Hales mattered. The cost, her sister, her old life, her moral certainty, was high. But the alternative was watching criminals prosper while victims suffered. "Tell me the rest of the plan," she said. "What happens in the next 8 days?" Luca shifted into business mode, the vulnerability disappearing behind professional competence. "My tech team is finalizing the evidence package. We have the documents you photographed plus financial records we obtained separately, testimony from former employees, and electronic communications proving intent. It's comprehensive. And then? Then we deliver it simultaneously to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, the Inspector General's Office for Medicare Fraud, and 3 major news outlets. The FBI will have to act. The evidence is too solid and too public to ignore. They'll execute warrants, freeze assets, make arrests. How long will that take? Once we release the evidence, 48 hours, maybe less. They'll want to move before the Hales can destroy anything or flee." Luca pulled up a calendar on his phone. "We're releasing everything next Wednesday at 9 a.m. By Friday, Richard and Ryan Hale will be in federal custody." 3 days before the wedding, Emma felt a vicious satisfaction at the timing. What about their lawyers? Won't they make this drag out for years? Probably, but they'll be fighting from jail, and the evidence is strong enough that conviction is almost certain. Richard is looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. Ryan probably 7 to 10 as an accessory. Luca's expression was hard. They'll die in prison or close to it. Their money, their reputation, their freedom, all gone. Emma should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. "And us?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "What happens to us when this is over?" Luca set down his phone, giving her his full attention. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know. This whole thing started as a business arrangement. You needed access to Ryan. I needed revenge. But now," Emma stopped, trying to articulate feelings she barely understood. "Now it feels like more than that. At least for me." "For me too." Luca's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. Emma, I meant what I said before. When this is over, I want you in my life. Not as an employee or an asset, but as a partner in everything. Even though I'm not part of your world? Even though I have no idea how to be with someone like you? Especially because of that. You make me want to be someone worthy of you, Emma. Someone who does more than just destroy his enemies. His thumb traced patterns on her palm. You make me want to build something good. Emma's throat tightened with emotion. I'm falling in love with you. I know it's fast and probably insane given how we met, but I can't help it. Then don't help it. Luca pulled her closer. Fall. I'll catch you. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Emma let herself fall into it. Let herself believe that maybe something good could come from all this darkness, that maybe she deserved the happiness she'd been chasing her whole life. They spent the evening planning logistics for the evidence release, going through final details with Sophia and the tech team via video call. It was surreal, sitting in Luca's penthouse discussing federal investigations like they were planning a dinner party, but Emma was getting used to surreal. Her entire life had become surreal. On Sunday, 3 days before the release, Emma woke to find Luca already up and dressed in a suit. She checked the time, barely 6 a.m. Where are you going? She asked, her voice rough with sleep. Meeting I can't postpone. I'll be back by noon. He sat on the edge of the bed, leaning down to kiss her. Go back to sleep. You were up late. Is everything okay? Just business. Nothing for you to worry about. But something in his expression seemed off, tension around his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Luca, I promise, Emma, it's routine. Get some rest. He kissed her again and left before she could ask more questions. Emma tried to go back to sleep but couldn't. The apartment felt too empty, too quiet without Luca's presence. She made coffee and stood at the windows watching the city wake up, trying to ignore the anxiety building in her chest. Something felt wrong. By noon, Luca hadn't returned. Emma called, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried Sophia, who answered on the first ring. Emma, what's wrong? Luca left this morning for a meeting and said he'd be back by noon. I can't reach him. Sophia was quiet for a moment. He's probably just running late. You know how these things go. No, I don't, actually. I don't know anything about his business. Emma heard the edge in her own voice. Sophia, is he in danger? We're always careful. Luca has security with him. That's not an answer. Sophia sighed. Emma, I can't discuss his business with you. It's not personal. It's operational security. But I promise if there was an emergency, you'd be the first person I'd call. Call me when he's back, Emma said, and hung up before Sophia could respond. The afternoon crawled by. Emma tried to distract herself with television, with reading, with anything that might stop her from imagining worst-case scenarios. But her mind kept conjuring images of violence, of Luca hurt, or arrested, or worse. At 4 p.m., her phone finally rang. Luca. Where are you? Emma demanded instead of hello. Home in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, the meeting ran long and my phone died. He sounded tired, but fine, completely normal. Emma, I'm okay. I promise. You said noon. I know, I'm sorry. Some things are unpredictable. A pause. Are you angry? Emma thought about it. I'm scared. I realize today that I don't know what you do when you're not with me. I don't know what dangers you face or what could happen to you. And it terrified me. I'll tell you everything when I get home, okay? Okay. Luca arrived 20 minutes later looking exhausted, his suit slightly rumpled, his expression tight with stress. Emma met him at the door and pulled him into her arms without a word. Rough day? She asked against his shoulder. You could say that. He pulled back enough to look at her. I'm sorry I worried you. Tell me what happened. Luca guided her to the sofa, pouring them both drinks before sitting down. There's been a complication with the Hale situation. Emma's stomach dropped. What kind of complication? Someone tipped them off. Not about the full extent of the evidence, but enough that Richard Hale knows he's being investigated. He started destroying documents, moving money offshore, preparing to run if necessary. Olivia, the name came out bitter. She told Ryan, after all. Probably, though it doesn't matter how they found out. What matters is they know. Luca took a long drink. I spent the day with our FBI contact, convincing them to move up the timeline. They're executing warrants tomorrow instead of Wednesday. Tomorrow? Emma felt lightheaded. But we're not ready. We're ready enough. The documents you photographed are backed up on secure servers. The evidence package is complete. We just need to pull the trigger sooner than planned." He set down his glass. "Emma, when the FBI moves tomorrow, things are going to get chaotic. Media attention, questions about sources, possible blowback. I need to know you're prepared for that." "I thought I'd be anonymous, that my involvement wouldn't come out." "In theory, you are. But if the Hales start making accusations, if they hire investigators to figure out who gave us access to Ryan's files..." He stopped. "I'm going to protect you, Emma. I promise. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that this gets messy." Emma's hands trembled as she reached for her own drink. "How messy? Worst case? They figure out you were in Ryan's apartment, that you photographed the documents. They accuse you of industrial espionage, try to discredit the evidence by claiming you obtained it illegally. You might face legal questions, possibly even charges. You said I wouldn't be at risk, and I meant it. Any charges against you would be minor compared to what they're facing, and I have lawyers who will make sure you're protected. But Emma, I need you to understand what might happen so you can make an informed choice." His eyes held hers. "If you want to back out, if you want to disappear before the warrants are executed, I'll make that happen. New identity, new city, whatever you need." Emma thought about running, about starting over somewhere far away from Ryan and Olivia and the whole mess she'd created. It would be easier, safer, smarter probably, but it would also mean the Hales might escape justice, might destroy enough evidence to avoid conviction, might continue preying on vulnerable patients while Emma hid in another city trying to forget she'd once had the power to stop them. "I'm not running," she said. "I started this, and I'm seeing it through." Luca's expression flooded with something that looked like pride and love and fear all mixed together. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified, but I'm sure." Emma set down her glass and took his hands. "We do this tomorrow. We finish it." "Together," Luca said. "Together." They spent the evening making final preparations. Luca walked Emma through what would happen. The FBI raids at dawn, the simultaneous media release, the expected response from the Hales legal team. He showed her the evidence package that would go public, hundreds of pages of documented fraud that would destroy Richard and Ryan Hales' lives as thoroughly as they'd destroyed their victims' health. "Are you happy?" Emma asked as they lay in bed that night, neither of them able to sleep. "Getting your revenge after all this time?" Luca was quiet for a moment. "Satisfied, maybe. My mother is still gone. But knowing that Richard Hale will pay for what he did, that he won't hurt anyone else, yes, that brings me peace. I wish I could have met her, your mother. She would have loved you. She had a thing for stubborn women who refused to accept the world's cruelty without fighting back." Luca's arm tightened around her. "She would have said you were too good for me. She would have been wrong. Maybe." He kissed the top of her head. "Try to sleep, Emma. Tomorrow's going to be long." But sleep wouldn't come. Emma lay awake listening to Luca's breathing slow and even, thinking about everything that would change in the next 24 hours. The Hales arrested, their empire crumbling, the wedding canceled in the most public way possible. Olivia's life destroyed. Emma waited to feel guilty about that, but all she felt was grim determination. She'd given her sister a chance. Olivia had chosen wrong. The consequences were hers to face. At 5 a.m., Luca's phone buzzed. He woke instantly, checking the message with the alertness of someone used to emergency calls. "They're moving," he said. "FBI is executing the warrants now." Emma sat up, her heart racing. "Already?" Richard Hale was booking a private flight to a non-extradition country. They had to grab him before he fled. Luca was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. "It's happening, Emma. Right now, federal agents are at his house, at his office, at Ryan's apartment. In 30 minutes, our media contacts will release the evidence package. By breakfast, this will be everywhere." Emma felt simultaneously exhilarated and terrified. "What do we do?" "We wait, and we watch the news." Luca held out his hand. "Come on, let's see our work pay off." They sat on the sofa with coffee and Luca's laptop, refreshing news sites until the first headlines started appearing. Medical supply executive arrested in massive Medicare fraud scheme, FBI. Raids Hale Medical Solutions in $40 million fraud investigation. Father-son duo face federal charges for healthcare. Fraud. Emma read the articles with shaking hands, seeing the evidence she'd gathered quoted extensively. Photos of Richard Hale being led away in handcuffs. Ryan's apartment building surrounded by federal agents. The wedding scheduled for this Friday would obviously not be happening. Her phone started ringing. Olivia. Emma stared at it until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again. You should answer, Luca said quietly. Why? So she can scream at me? So you can hear her realize you were telling the truth. Emma hesitated, then answered on the fourth ring. Hello? Emma. Olivia's voice was wrecked, raw from crying. Emma, please, I need your help. They arrested Ryan. The FBI came this morning, and they took him and his father, and they're saying terrible things about fraud, and... She broke off into sobs. I warned you, Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. I told you this was coming. I know, and I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I said those horrible things. But Emma, please, you have to help me. They're asking questions about whether I knew anything, whether I was involved. Were you? No, of course not. I didn't know anything about this, I swear. Olivia's desperation was palpable even through the phone. Please, Emma, you're my sister. I need you. Emma thought about all the times she'd needed Olivia. After Ryan left, during their mother's illness, when she'd been drowning in debt and loneliness. All the times Olivia had been too busy or too focused on her own life to help. Get a lawyer, Emma said. Tell them everything you know, cooperate fully, and distance yourself from the Hales completely. That's the best advice I can give you. That's it? That's all you're going to say? What did you expect, Liv? You called me bitter and jealous 3 days ago. You said Ryan was right to leave me, and now you want my help because your world is falling apart? Emma's voice hardened. I gave you a chance to walk away. You chose not to take it. Live with your choice. Emma, please. Emma hung up and turned off her phone. Luca pulled her against him, and Emma let herself feel the weight of what she'd just done. Turning her back on her sister in her moment of need, choosing revenge over family, becoming someone she barely recognized. Did I do the right thing? She whispered. I can't answer that for you. Only you know what you can live with. Luca's hand stroked her hair. But for what it's worth, I think you did what Olivia had coming. Emma watched the news coverage continue to unfold. Analysts discussing the fraud scheme, former employees coming forward with stories, patients who'd been denied care because of the Hales' greed finally having their voices heard. Justice, she thought. This is what justice looks like. Even if it came wrapped in darkness and delivered by a woman who'd lost herself to find her power. The media firestorm lasted 3 days. Constant news coverage, think pieces about healthcare fraud, interviews with victims who'd been denied care because of the Hales' systematic theft. Emma watched it unfold from the safety of Luca's penthouse, her phone off, the world outside reduced to images on a screen. Richard Hale's bail had been set at $5 million. He'd paid it within hours, but the damage was done. His face plastered across every news site, his company's stock price in free fall, former business partners racing to distance themselves from the scandal. Ryan's bail was lower, $2 million, which his father had also posted. But the federal prosecutor had made it clear that both men were facing serious prison time, that the evidence was overwhelming, that cooperation was their only hope for reduced sentences. On the fourth day, Emma's lawyer called. Luca had retained him immediately after the arrests, a sharp-eyed man named David Chen who specialized in protecting people caught in the crossfire of federal investigations. The FBI wants to interview you, David said without preamble. They know you were in Ryan Hale's apartment 2 weeks ago. Building security footage shows you entering and leaving. Emma's stomach dropped. She looked at Luca, who was listening on speaker, his expression carefully neutral. What do they think I did? She asked. They're not sure yet, but Ryan's lawyers are claiming the documents were stolen, that someone broke into his home office and photographed confidential materials. They're trying to get the evidence suppressed. David's tone suggested this wasn't particularly worrying. Of course, the documents you photographed are just a small portion of what the FBI seized. Even if they suppressed your photos, they have enough from the warrants to prosecute successfully. So why do they want to talk to me? Probably to understand the full scope of how information was gathered and to determine if you broke any laws in obtaining it. A pause. Emma, I need to ask you directly. Did you have Ryan's permission to photograph those documents? Emma thought about lying, but what was the point? David was her lawyer. He needed the truth to protect her. No. He didn't know I was in his office. I told him I needed to use the bathroom and went there instead. But you were an invited guest in his apartment. You had permission to be in the space generally, even if not in that specific room. David sounded like he was thinking aloud. And you didn't break in, didn't steal any physical property. You took photographs of documents that were left unsecured. Is that legal? Luca asked. It's complicated. Technically, photographing someone's private documents without permission could be considered trespassing or invasion of privacy. But given that the documents prove federal crimes and that Emma acted as a private citizen rather than a government agent, the evidence should still be admissible. David's confidence was reassuring. The bigger question is whether they'll charge Emma with anything. My guess is no. The prosecutor won't want to muddy the waters by going after someone who helped expose the fraud, but we need to be prepared. When do they want to interview her? Luca's hand found Emma's, squeezing gently. Tomorrow, if possible. At their office, with me present, obviously. Emma, I need you to understand that you don't have to do this. You can invoke your Fifth Amendment rights and refuse to answer questions, but cooperation will look better if charges are being considered. Emma thought about it, about sitting across from FBI agents and explaining how she'd betrayed her ex-boyfriend, how she'd partnered with a known criminal to bring down his family. It sounded insane, even in her own head, but David was right. Cooperation was her best option. I'll do it, she said. Tomorrow's fine. After David hung up, Emma sat in silence, processing. This was really happening. Federal investigators wanted to question her about her role in exposing a massive fraud scheme. She could face charges. Her name might become public. Everything she'd done in the shadows might be dragged into harsh fluorescent light. Second thoughts? Luca asked quietly. About 100 of them. Emma leaned against him, needing his solid presence. But it's too late for second thoughts, isn't it? It's never too late. We could still disappear if you want. New identities, new city, leave all this behind. And the Hales? Would still go to prison. The FBI has enough evidence without your testimony. Luca turned to face her. Emma, I need you to understand something. This revenge, this justice, it was never worth sacrificing you. If testifying puts you at risk, we walk away. Emma thought about walking away, about spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering if the Hales might somehow come after her, if federal prosecutors might track her down, about living as someone else, cutting ties with everything she'd ever known, about running from the first time in her life she'd stood up for something. I'm not running, she said firmly. I helped expose criminals who were hurting vulnerable people. If I have to answer questions about that, fine. I'll tell the truth. The whole truth? Luca's expression was carefully neutral. Including my involvement? Emma hadn't thought about that. About having to explain Luca's role, about potentially implicating him in what exactly? He hadn't broken into Ryan's apartment, hadn't stolen anything, had simply provided Emma with information and tools to act on her own suspicions. But the FBI knew who Luca was, knew about his organization. If Emma admitted to working with him, they might use it as leverage to investigate his other activities. What do you want me to say? She asked. The truth, whatever that costs me. I won't ask you to lie to federal investigators, Emma. That's a line I won't cross with you. He cupped her face gently. Tell them everything. How we met, what I told you about the Hales, how I helped you get the evidence. If they use it against me, I'll deal with it. Luca, I mean it. Your integrity matters more than my freedom. His eyes were steady, certain. Promise me you'll tell the truth. Emma's throat tightened. Even if it means losing you? Even then. Though I have good lawyers and a lot of practice not getting caught. A slight smile. I'll be fine, Emma. Just be honest. The FBI office was exactly as intimidating as Emma had imagined, all concrete and glass and security checkpoints that made her feel immediately guilty despite having done nothing wrong. David Chen met her in the lobby, looking sharp in his suit and projecting the kind of confidence that came from years of navigating federal bureaucracy. Remember, he said as they waited to be called back, you're here voluntarily. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, we can stop the interview. Don't let them pressure you into saying anything you're not sure about. I'm just going to tell the truth. Good. But let me handle any questions about potential charges or immunity. That's my job. He checked his watch. And Emma? The agents interviewing you are professionals. They're not your enemies. They just want to understand how the evidence was obtained. The agents turned out to be a woman in her 40s named Sarah Rodriguez and a younger man named Tom Patterson. They led Emma and David to a conference room with a recording device on the table and windows overlooking the city. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Carter," Agent Rodriguez said, her tone professionally friendly. "We just have a few questions about your relationship with Ryan Hale and your visit to his apartment on December 3rd. Emma took a deep breath. "Okay. Can you describe your relationship with Mr. Hale?" "We dated briefly about 2 years ago, 4 months. He ended it without explanation, and I later found out he'd started seeing my sister shortly after." Agent Rodriguez made a note. "And when did you learn about the fraud at Hale Medical Solutions?" "About a month ago. Someone told me that Ryan's family was under investigation for Medicare fraud." "Who told you that?" "Here it was. The moment where she either lied or implicated Luca." Emma thought about his words. "Tell the truth, whatever it costs me." "Luca Moretti," she said clearly. "We met by chance, and he told me he'd been investigating the Hales because their fraud had denied his mother necessary medical equipment." Both agents exchanged glances. Agent Patterson leaned forward slightly. "And how exactly did you meet Mr. Moretti?" Emma explained the bus incident, the robbery, how Luca had intervened. She left nothing out. His admission that he'd been watching Ryan's family, his offer to help her get revenge, the partnership they'd formed. "So Mr. Moretti encouraged you to obtain evidence from Ryan Hale's apartment?" Agent Rodriguez asked. "He provided information and tools, yes. But the decision to go there, to photograph the documents, that was mine." Emma met the agent's eyes. "I wanted proof that Ryan was involved in the fraud. I wanted to see for myself before I committed to helping expose them." "And the documents you photographed? You didn't have permission to access those?" "No, but Ryan had invited me to his apartment. I was there as a guest. A guest who went into his private office and photographed confidential business documents." Agent Patterson's tone wasn't accusatory, just clarifying. "Yes. Did you know that was illegal?" David cleared his throat. "My client doesn't need to answer that." But Emma wanted to answer, wanted them to understand. "I knew it was morally questionable," she said. "I wasn't sure about the legality, but I also knew that what the Hales were doing was destroying people's lives, and that someone needed to stop them. The legal system had failed. They'd been defrauding Medicare for years without consequences. So yes, I took photographs without permission, because it was the right thing to do." Agent Rodriguez studied her for a long moment. "Ms. Carter, I'm going to be frank with you. Ryan Hale's attorneys are pushing hard to get your photographs excluded from evidence. They're claiming illegal search and seizure, invasion of privacy, conspiracy with a known criminal," she gestured at Luca's name in her notes, "to conduct industrial espionage." Emma's stomach churned. "And will they succeed?" "No, because as your lawyer correctly noted, you weren't acting as a government agent. And more importantly, because the documents you photographed represent only a fraction of the evidence we've gathered. We executed warrants at Hale Medical Solutions, at Richard Hale's residence, at Ryan's office. We've seized computers, financial records, communications going back 5 years." Agent Rodriguez's expression was satisfied. "Your photographs simply accelerated our timeline. Even without them, we have more than enough to prosecute successfully." Relief flooded through Emma. "So I didn't break the law?" "You operated in a legal gray area," Agent Patterson said. "Technically, you could be charged with trespass or invasion of privacy. But given the nature of what you exposed, and that you acted as a private citizen trying to report a crime, we're not recommending charges." David actually smiled. "So my client is free to go?" After a few more questions, Agent Rodriguez turned her attention back to Emma. "Tell me about Luca Moretti's involvement. Did he provide financial compensation for obtaining the evidence?" "He gave me money, yes, but not as payment for the photographs specifically. Emma paused, trying to explain their complicated arrangement. "He gave me housing and financial support because I was struggling. The evidence gathering was separate." "But connected," Agent Patterson noted. "Yes, but I wasn't working for him. We were partners in exposing the fraud." "Partners?" Agent Rodriguez's tone suggested skepticism. "Ms. Carter, I need to be clear about something. Luca Moretti is a person of interest in multiple ongoing investigations. His organization is suspected of involvement in illegal activities ranging from money laundering to extortion. By partnering with him, you've potentially exposed yourself to legal jeopardy." "Are you charging me with something?" Emma asked, her voice steadier than she felt. No, but I'm advising you to distance yourself from Mr. Moretti, for your own protection. Emma thought about Luca waiting for her at home, about the life they were trying to build together, about the man who'd crashed through a bus door to save her and who'd prioritized her integrity over his own freedom. I appreciate the advice, she said carefully, but my relationship with Luca Moretti is personal, not criminal. Well, personal relationships with criminals can become criminal very quickly, Agent Rodriguez warned. David intervened smoothly. Are we discussing charges against my client or offering lifestyle advice? Because if it's the latter, I think we're done here. The agents asked a few more questions. Details about the documents, timeline of events, Emma's knowledge of the Hales' business practices, but the tension had shifted. They'd gotten what they needed, and Emma's cooperation had apparently satisfied their concerns about her involvement. Finally, Agent Rodriguez slid a business card across the table. If you think of anything else relevant to the Hale investigation, please call me. And Ms. Carter? Thank you. The evidence you provided helped us move faster on arresting 2 people who've caused immeasurable harm. That took courage. Emma took the card, her hand trembling slightly. What happens now to Ryan and his father? Trial eventually, but given the strength of the evidence, I expect plea negotiations will start soon. Richard Hale is looking at 15 to 20 years. Ryan probably 10 to 12. Agent Rodriguez's expression was grim satisfaction. They'll both die in prison or close to it, thanks in large part to you. Emma left the FBI office feeling simultaneously lighter and heavier. Lighter because she wouldn't face charges, because the agents had actually thanked her. Heavier because the finality had settled in. Ryan and Richard Hale would go to prison, their lives destroyed, and she'd been the catalyst. David walked her to where Luca's car waited. You did well in there, better than most people under that kind of pressure. They warned me about Luca. They always do. It's standard practice when civilians get tangled up with known criminals. David adjusted his briefcase. But for what it's worth, Emma, I've represented a lot of Luca Moretti's associates over the years. He's dangerous, yes, but he's also honorable in his own way. He protects the people he cares about. You think I'm safe with him? I think you're safer than you'd be without him, given that you just helped take down a wealthy family with nothing left to lose. David's expression was serious. The Hales will be looking for someone to blame. Having Luca Moretti's protection isn't the worst thing right now. Emma climbed into the car where Marco waited patiently. She'd asked Luca not to come, had needed to face the FBI on her own terms, but now, riding back to the penthouse, she desperately wanted to see him. He was waiting when she arrived, standing by the windows like he'd been watching for the car. Emma walked straight into his arms without a word. How bad? He asked against her hair. Not bad at all. No charges. They basically thanked me for the evidence. Emma pulled back to look at him. I told them everything, Luca. About you, about how we met, about our partnership. They warned me to stay away from you. Smart advice. His expression was unreadable. Are you going to take it? What do you think? I think you should seriously consider it. The FBI wasn't wrong. Being close to me is dangerous, Emma. I can protect you from a lot of things, but I can't make my life less complicated. Emma studied his face, seeing the careful neutrality that meant he was protecting himself from potential hurt. He was giving her an out, permission to walk away before she got in too deep. Too late for that. I'm not going anywhere, she said firmly. Unless you want me to. Never. The word came out rough, and Luca pulled her close again. But Emma, you need to understand what you're choosing. My world isn't safe or simple. There will always be investigations, always be danger, always be moral complexity. I know, and I'm choosing it anyway. Emma rose on her toes to kiss him. I'm choosing you. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other while the city spread out below them. Emma thought about how far she'd come from the invisible woman who'd opened a wedding invitation 6 weeks ago. How completely her life had transformed. Speaking of the wedding, Luca said, like he'd read her mind, it's officially canceled. The venue released a statement this morning citing unforeseen circumstances. What about Olivia? According to my sources, she's moved back to her old apartment. Ryan's lawyers advised them to have no contact until the trial. She's cooperating with investigators, gave a statement saying she had no knowledge of the fraud. Emma felt a pang of something that might have been sympathy. Do you think she really didn't know? Probably not. Olivia strikes me as someone who doesn't ask questions she doesn't want answers to. Luca's tone was matter of fact. She'll be fine, Emma. She has her job, her apartment, her life. She'll recover. Without a sister. That was her choice, not yours. He guided her to the sofa. You gave her a chance. She chose not to take it. Emma's phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on after leaving the FBI office. A text from an unknown number. I know what you did. You destroyed my life because you were jealous. I'll never forgive you. Olivia. Emma showed it to Luca, who frowned. Block her. She's angry and lashing out, but engaging won't help. She's right, though, isn't she? I did destroy her life. No. Ryan destroyed her life by being a criminal. His father destroyed her life by raising a son who participated in fraud. You just exposed the truth. Luca took the phone and blocked Olivia's number himself. Stop taking responsibility for other people's choices, Emma. But it wasn't that simple, and they both knew it. Emma had made choices too, to partner with Luca, to photograph those documents, to pursue revenge even knowing it would hurt her sister. Those choices had consequences she'd have to live with. The question was whether she could. Over the next 2 weeks, the legal proceedings unfolded with brutal efficiency. Richard Hale's lawyers attempted to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor held firm, accept 15 years minimum, or go to trial and face 25. Ryan's attorneys tried the same, seeking 7 years with possibility of parole. The prosecutor offered 10, take it or leave it. Both men took the deals. Pleading guilty, allocution in open court, immediate remand to federal custody pending sentencing. The news coverage was extensive. Victim impact statements from patients who'd been denied care, financial analysts discussing the collapse of Hale Medical Solutions, think pieces about healthcare fraud and the failure of regulatory oversight. Emma watched it all from a distance, her name never appearing in the coverage. The FBI had kept her involvement quiet, listing her only as a confidential informant in court documents. She was grateful for the anonymity, even as she wondered if she deserved it. Shouldn't she be held accountable too? For the manipulation, the betrayal, the calculated destruction of people's lives? You're thinking too loud again, Luca said one evening as they prepared dinner together in his kitchen. He'd been teaching her to cook, patient with her mistakes, clearly enjoying the domestic routine they'd fallen into. Just wondering if I'm a good person anymore, Emma said, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. Does it matter? Of course it matters. Good and bad aren't meaningless concepts, Luca. We don't get to just ignore morality because consequences are complicated. I'm not suggesting we ignore it. I'm suggesting that good and bad are less important than harm and help. He took the knife from her before she could injure herself. Did you harm vulnerable people or help them? Did you increase suffering or decrease it? I helped expose fraud that was hurting Medicare patients, but I also destroyed my sister's engagement and helped send 2 people to prison. 2 people who were committing serious crimes. Luca resumed her chopping with practiced efficiency. Emma, you didn't put Ryan in prison. His choices did that. You just made sure he faced consequences. That's a convenient way to avoid guilt. It's also the truth. He set down the knife and turned to face her. Listen to me. You are not responsible for Ryan's crimes. You are not responsible for Olivia's poor judgment. You are not responsible for the Hales building an empire on fraud. You're only responsible for your own actions, which were to expose wrongdoing and protect future victims. That's not villainy, Emma. That's courage. Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to accept the narrative where she was the hero, where everything she'd done was justified by the outcome. But late at night, when Luca was asleep beside her and the city lights filtered through the windows, Emma still heard Olivia's voice. You destroyed my life because you were jealous. Was it true? Had this all been about revenge dressed up as justice? The question haunted her until the sentencing hearing 3 weeks later. Emma hadn't planned to attend. The FBI had assured her that her presence wasn't required, that the guilty pleas meant no trial testimony would be necessary. But the night before the hearing, she'd realized she needed to see it, needed to watch Ryan and Richard Hale face consequences for what they'd done, needed to know if it would make her feel better or worse. Luca had offered to come with her, but Emma had declined. This was something she needed to do alone. So she sat in the back of the federal courthouse, anonymous among the journalists and curious public, watching as Richard Hale was led into the courtroom in a prison jumpsuit. He looked diminished. The arrogant businessman who'd looked down at Emma over dinner 2 years ago was gone, replaced by a thin man with gray skin and defeated eyes. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Richard Hale stood and read a prepared statement about remorse and accepting responsibility that sounded hollow even to Emma's ears. The judge wasn't impressed either. She sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison, noting that his fraud had denied care to vulnerable patients, and that his complete lack of cooperation with investigators suggested no genuine remorse. Ryan's hearing was next. He looked worse than his father, younger, more broken, like he couldn't quite believe this was happening to him. His lawyer made an impassioned speech about Ryan being led astray by his father, about his youth and potential for rehabilitation. The prosecutor countered with evidence of Ryan's extensive involvement, his knowing participation in fraud, his attempt to destroy evidence after learning about the investigation. And then they called a witness Emma hadn't expected, a woman in her 70s who walked slowly to the stand with the aid of a cane. She introduced herself as Margaret Torres, one of the Medicare beneficiaries denied necessary medical equipment because of the Hales fraud. "My doctor prescribed a wheelchair for me 3 years ago," Mrs. Torres said in a quiet voice that nonetheless carried through the courtroom. "I have severe arthritis. I couldn't walk more than a few feet without collapsing, but Medicare denied the claim, said it wasn't medically necessary even though my doctor disagreed." She described months of appeals, of trying to function without the equipment she needed, of finally scraping together money to buy a used wheelchair herself. All because the Hales had so thoroughly corrupted the system that legitimate claims were flagged as potential fraud. "I want this court to understand that what these men did wasn't just financial crime," Mrs. Torres concluded. "They stole my mobility. They stole my dignity. They stole months of my life that I spent in pain and confined to my home. And they did it to thousands of people like me so they could buy expensive cars and vacation homes." Emma felt tears sliding down her face. This was why. This was why she'd photographed those documents, why she'd partnered with Luca, why she'd chosen to expose Ryan and his family despite the cost. Because of people like Mrs. Torres who deserved better. The judge sentenced Ryan to 12 years, 2 more than the plea agreement had specified. She cited his lack of genuine remorse, his attempt to blame others for his choices, and his continued failure to understand the human cost of his crimes. Both men were remanded to custody immediately, led away by federal marshals to begin serving their sentences. Emma watched them go and waited to feel triumphant. Instead, she just felt sad that it had come to this, that Ryan had chosen greed over integrity, that vulnerable people had suffered because wealthy men wanted to be wealthier. She left the courthouse and found Luca waiting outside despite her insistence that she go alone. He stood by his car in the weak winter sunlight, hands in his pockets, watching for her with an expression that made Emma's chest tight. "I thought you weren't coming," she said when she reached him. "I wasn't, but then I realized you might need me after." He searched her face. "Do you? Need me?" "Yes." The admission came easily. "I always need you, Luca. I think that's what scares me." "Needing someone isn't weakness, Emma. It's trust." He pulled her close, and Emma let herself lean into his strength. "How do you feel?" "Sad, relieved, guilty, satisfied, all of it at once." She pulled back to look at him. "Is that normal?" "I think that's being human." Luca guided her toward the car. "Come on, let's go home." Home. The word settled warm in Emma's chest. Somewhere along the way, Luca's penthouse had become home. Or maybe it wasn't the place, but the person. Luca himself had become home, the safe harbor in the chaos she'd created. They drove through the city in comfortable silence, and Emma watched the streets slide past, thinking about transformation. She'd come so far from the invisible woman working double shifts, had become someone powerful and dangerous and morally complex. She'd become someone who mattered. The question was what to do with that, now that the revenge was complete. "I've been thinking," Emma said as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse, "about what comes next." "Next?" Luca's expression was carefully neutral. "After all this. After the trial and the sentencing and the media coverage dies down." Emma took his hand. "I can't go back to my old life, Luca. I don't want to. But I also can't just be your... What am I, exactly? Your partner? Your girlfriend? Your person of interest the FBI warned to stay away from?" Luca was quiet until they were inside the apartment, until he'd poured them both wine and they'd settled on the sofa overlooking the city they'd conquered together. "What do you want to be?" he asked finally. Emma thought about it, really thought about what she wanted from this complicated, dangerous man who'd given her everything she'd asked for and more. "I want to be your partner," she said, "in everything, not just romance, but life. I want to know about your business, want to help with the work you do, want to be part of building something that matters." "My business is illegal, Emma. Dangerous. Everything the FBI warned you about." "I know, and I also know you use it to protect people the system ignores, to provide for families who can't access traditional help, to hold predators accountable when courts won't." She set down her wine glass. "I want to be part of that. I want to help." Luca studied her for a long moment. "This isn't a decision to make lightly. Once you're in, once you really know how my organization operates, there's no going back to a normal life." "I don't want a normal life. Normal made me invisible." Emma moved closer. "I want an extraordinary life with you, Luca, whatever that looks like." Something shifted in his expression. Hope and love and fear all mixed together. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Luca kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Emma knew she was making the right choice. Maybe not the safe choice, maybe not the moral choice, but the right one for her. Over the next few weeks, Luca began teaching Emma about his organization, the protection services they provided to immigrant communities, the loans to people banks refused, the conflict resolution that kept neighborhoods safe when police wouldn't help, but also the smuggling operations, the money laundering, the violence that sometimes became necessary when negotiation failed. Emma learned about the careful balance between helping people and profiting from their needs, about the moral complexity of providing services the legal system wouldn't, even when those services existed outside the law, about choosing which rules to break and which lines never to cross. She learned that Luca's organization had strict codes: no drugs, no human trafficking, no preying on the vulnerable they claimed to protect. They provided for their community, solved problems others couldn't, and yes, they profited. But profit wasn't the point. The point was power used to protect rather than exploit. Emma found herself drawn to the work in ways that should have worried her. She helped establish a foundation using money from Luca's legitimate businesses to provide medical equipment to Medicare beneficiaries denied coverage. Mrs. Torres became their first recipient, getting a state-of-the-art motorized wheelchair that transformed her mobility. "I don't understand," Mrs. Torres said when Emma delivered it personally. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you deserve better than what you got," Emma said simply. "And because making sure people like the Hales go to prison isn't enough. We need to help the people they hurt." The foundation grew quickly. Other fraud victims came forward, needing equipment or assistance, or just someone to advocate for them in a system designed to deny their claims. Emma found herself coordinating benefits appeals, connecting people with resources, using Luca's money and influence to make real differences in real lives. It was extraordinary work. It mattered. She mattered. 3 months after the sentencing, Emma stood in the foundation office they'd established, a modest space in a neighborhood that needed the help, nothing flashy or attention-seeking. She was reviewing grant applications when her phone rang. Unknown number. Emma almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" Silence for a moment, then, "It's Olivia." Emma's chest tightened. She hadn't spoken to her sister since that text 3 months ago, hadn't thought about her in weeks beyond the occasional guilty twinge. "How did you get this number?" Emma asked. "I have my ways. Look, I don't want to talk long. Olivia's voice cracked slightly. "I saw the news about your foundation, about the medical equipment program. And I wanted to say that I understand now why you did what you did." A long pause. "I found out things about Ryan after his arrest, things he'd hidden from me, about other women, about debts, about lies that had nothing to do with the fraud. He wasn't who I thought he was." Emma closed her eyes. "I'm sorry, Liv." "Don't be. You tried to warn me and I didn't listen. I chose him over you, and I was wrong." Olivia took a shaky breath. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you did the right thing, even if it hurt like hell." "Are you okay?" The question surprised Emma. She hadn't thought she still cared. "Getting there. I'm in therapy, working on understanding why I made the choices I did, learning to be less competitive, less resentful." A bitter laugh. "Turns out jealousy is a family trait. It doesn't have to be." "Maybe not." Olivia was quiet for a moment. Your foundation is doing good work, Emma. Mom would be proud of you. The words hit harder than expected. Thanks. I should go. But Emma, I really am sorry for everything. Me too, Liv. Me too. The call ended, and Emma sat staring at her phone, processing. Olivia had apologized, had acknowledged her mistakes, had seen the foundation and understood, finally, that Emma's actions had been about justice rather than jealousy. It didn't fix everything, didn't undo the hurt or the betrayal, but it was something. A small step toward healing that Emma hadn't known she needed. She called Luca to tell him about it. How do you feel? He asked. Lighter, somehow. Like I can finally let go of the anger. Emma looked around the foundation office, at the files of people they'd helped, at the tangible evidence that good could come from darkness. I think I'm ready to move forward, Luca. Really move forward. With me? With everything. The foundation, your organization, our life together. She smiled. All of it. Then I have something to ask you. She heard rustling, like he was moving to a different room. Can you come home? There's something I want to discuss in person. Emma's heart skipped. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived to find Luca waiting with champagne and an expression that was equal parts nervous and excited. He'd set up the dining table overlooking the city, candles and flowers and effort that suggested this was important. What's all this? Emma asked, suddenly nervous herself. Sit, please. Luca poured champagne, his hands steady despite the tension Emma could sense. I've been thinking about the future, about what we're building together. Okay. The foundation is growing faster than we anticipated. In 3 months, you've helped over 200 people access medical equipment they'd been denied. You've become an advocate, Emma, someone people trust to fight for them. Luca's expression was pride and love combined, and I realized that this is what you were meant to do. Not revenge, not destruction, but building something that helps people. Emma's throat tightened. Luca, let me finish. I want to expand the foundation, not just medical equipment, but legal aid, housing assistance, educational programs. I want to create something that provides for people the way my organization does, but legitimately. Above board. He reached across the table, taking her hands. And I want you to run it, to make it yours. Mine? You'd have full control. I'd provide funding, but no interference. It would be your vision, your work, your legacy. Luca's thumbs traced circles on her palms. Emma Carter, who was invisible for so long, building something that makes sure other invisible people are seen and helped. Tears spilled down Emma's face before she could stop them. Luca, that's incredible, but it's your money, your resources, our money, our resources. He stood, pulling her up with him. Emma, I want you to marry me. The world stopped. Emma stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? Luca pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the candlelight and threw rainbows across the room. Simple, elegant, perfect. I want you to marry me, he repeated. I want to build a life together, a family, an empire that helps people instead of hurting them. I want to wake up with you every morning and go to sleep with you every night. I want to be the person you call when you need someone, and the person who makes sure you never feel invisible again. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Emma Carter, will you marry me? Emma looked down at this dangerous, beautiful man who'd crashed into her life and given her everything, revenge and justice and purpose and love. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, broken and struggling and slowly disappearing, and the woman she'd become, powerful and purposeful, and finally visible. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes, Luca, I'll marry me. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like champagne and tears and the promise of a future Emma had never imagined possible. They were married 6 weeks later in a small ceremony in Italy, in the village where Luca's family had originated. No press, no publicity, just Sophia and a handful of Luca's most trusted associates bearing witness as Emma Carter became Emma Moretti in a church older than America itself. She wore a simple cream dress that made her feel beautiful without trying too hard. Luca wore a suit that probably cost more than Emma's old annual salary and cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. They exchanged vows in Italian and English, promising loyalty and love and partnership in all things. And when the priest pronounced them married, Emma felt something settle in her chest that she'd been missing her entire life. She belonged somewhere. With someone. Finally. The reception was at a villa overlooking rolling hills covered in grapevines, and Emma danced with her husband under string lights while his associates drank wine and celebrated. It was nothing like the wedding Olivia had planned. No massive guest list, no elaborate decorations, no performance of wealth and status. It was perfect. Later, standing on the terrace with Luca's arms around her and Italian countryside spreading out below them, Emma thought about the journey that had brought her here, the wedding invitation that had shattered her world, the bus ride that had changed everything, the choice to fight back instead of disappearing. "Do you regret any of it?" Luca asked, like he'd read her thoughts. Emma considered the question seriously. Did she regret the manipulation, the revenge, the systematic destruction of people who'd hurt her? "No," she said finally. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that people like the Hales exist who make revenge feel like justice. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret choosing to matter." "You always mattered, Emma, even when you were invisible." "Maybe, but I didn't feel like it." She turned in his arms to face him. "You made me feel like I mattered, Luca. You saw me when no one else did." "I'll always see you." He kissed her softly. "For the rest of our lives, I promise you'll never be invisible again." They returned to New York a week later, back to the penthouse that had become home and the foundation that had become Emma's purpose. The medical equipment program had grown to serve 500 people. They'd added legal aid clinics in 3 neighborhoods. Plans were underway for housing assistance and educational scholarships. Emma had become someone who mattered not through revenge, but through building something that helped others. The girl who'd been overlooked her entire life was now someone people sought out. Someone who could solve problems and provide resources and make real differences in real lives. She'd become unforgettable. On a cold March evening, 6 months after the arrest that had changed everything, Emma sat in the foundation office reviewing the day's work. 23 people helped. 15 medical equipment requests approved. 3 families connected with housing resources. 2 legal cases won against predatory lenders. Real change. Real impact. Her phone buzzed with a text from Luca. "Come home. I'm making dinner." Emma smiled and gathered her things. Home. To her husband, to the life they were building together, to the future that stretched out before them full of possibility and purpose and love. She'd been invisible once, had let the world treat her like she didn't matter until she'd almost believed it herself. But the woman who locked the foundation office and headed out into the New York evening wasn't invisible anymore. Emma Moretti walked through streets that had once ignored her with her head high, her purpose clear, her worth undeniable. She'd reclaimed herself, had fought for justice and won, had transformed pain into power and revenge into redemption. And as she rode the elevator up to the penthouse where Luca waited, Emma realized she'd finally found what she'd been searching for her entire life. Not revenge, not even justice, just the simple, extraordinary gift of being seen, of mattering, of being unforgettable. The elevator doors opened, and there was Luca with flour on his hands and love in his eyes, and Emma walked into his arms knowing she was finally, truly home. The girl who'd been erased had become a woman who would never be forgotten. And that, Emma thought, as Luca kissed her, and the city sparkled below them, was the greatest revenge of all.